Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on when you're watching. Hey, Lord Zero, hey, Jordan, hey, Dan, hey, Legalized Comedy, and Marngel. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you're having a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. And, yeah, we're kicking off today's live stream talking about some leaks, which I tend to not enjoy talking about, but we're so close, guys. It's literally 1 week to go until Dub. At this point, I feel like the likelihood of leaks being more accurate has gone up. I'm not saying they're accurate, but anyway, let's just speculate on them together, shall we? So, probably the most interesting one that I saw in the past week, maybe not as flashy as mixed reality headset, blah 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 blah, which is what all people want to talk about some of the time, but this one was more in regards to iOS 17 being able to convert your iPhone into some kind of more permanent, like nightstand mode. And there was a concept made by actually one of my followers. I found out. I think he's following me, but his name is John Apple 82 on Twitter, and he came up with that concept for the thumbnail, which was kind of cool. Showcasing how your iPhone, especially iPhones with always-on displays, I think would probably be much better at this because they can lower the refresh rate down to 1 hertz, probably not damage the display too much, or basically turn it into an alarm clock, because our iPhones are kind of the same similar style display of iPhones that were... sorry, not iPhones, but digital alarm clocks that would not just say the time, but also would give you some little stats about the weather or battery percentage or what your alarm is set for. You know, the Apple Watch has had nightstand mode for so long. Now that the iPhone has MagSafe, yeah, the nightstand feature requires a MagSafe iPhone. That's not too crazy to me. I just hope they don't require a freaking always-on display, because that would mean it only works with the 14 Pro. Maybe that helps you surge a little bit more with 14 Pro sales until the 15 series comes out. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm allergic to these horrible Apple ideas. Yeah, like Alpha saying, my HomePod Mini is my alarm clock. That's kind of the way I was visualizing it, was this kind of ties back into the tablet stuff. So we were saying how the Pixel tablet, how that docks turns it into a little smart speaker / smart home, controller display. And, Apple may be taking that idea a little bit step further here and saying, hey, we can kind of replicate the Nest Hub experience by literally just docking our iPhones onto a certain mount, and with the right software, iPhone's got, it's not going to be as good a speaker as a HomePod Mini per se, but you can get all kinds of HomePod Mini / iPhone mounted accessories. I'm sure Belkid could come up with one, or Apple could come up with one. But basically, I find it funny that we saw the Pixel tablet and its approach to having a docked design and then a mobile design, and we were like, wow, that's an interesting idea. It would be great if Apple did that with the iPad. And now the leaks are all pointing to, oh, no, Apple may not do that with the iPad, but they may do it with the iPhone. Apple cares more about pushing iPhone sales more so than they do rethinking what the iPad could be. That's going to take too much work. That would mean the iPadOS team has to do something. Wouldn't Apple rather try to further solidify or further dig the iPhone into your ecosystem so that it's harder and harder to come out of? I guess maybe because the iPhone's a lot more popular than the iPad, I suppose, but I guess there's no reason we can't ask for both. If the iPhone can get a nightstand mode that gives you some light information, gives you some widgets, why can't the iPad do something similar for the smart home? But this might be Apple's way of getting ahead of it here. iPadOS getting a good update. Yeah, right, like that's going to happen. Like that'll ever happen. I am allergic to leaks, sorry. These leaks are stream-worthy and not video-worthy, Drew? Well, I've mentioned in previous streams, I'm kind of trying to get away from leak videos because they're so hard to, especially if you try to stay on top of them. Like if you try to do a video on a leak right as the leak gets reported. I kind of was dealing with too much leak whiplash earlier in the year, where there would be a leak and I'd report on it, and then the next day it would be contradicted. The same source sometimes, or a different source, would say, actually, the exact opposite of what yesterday's report ended up being true. So now I like giving it some time. I'm like, let me see if the leaks will stay consistent. And I felt weird doing videos on them because it just felt like an easy way to, I guess, game the algorithm or to profit off of short-term, like, news that may or may not be true, but a lot of the time it feels like there's definitely some fake stuff out there, and I didn't want to profit off fake news, and I felt like live streams are definitely not strategic for the algorithm. These don't perform the same way a normal edited, uploaded video does. And the other benefit of doing it live for the coverage of leaks is that I don't have to dive too far into it, because with live streams I kind of let the chat decide what we want to talk about. So if you guys want to continue talking about it, we can, or if you want to talk about something else, you can bring that up. So I was kind of just taking a break on the leak videos. I'm not saying I'll never talk about them again, but it was just getting kind of old. Like, I'd report on something, and then the next day, actually, that's not true. And then another leak would come out. I'd report on that next day. Actually, that's not true. So I took a break on leak videos for the past month or month and a half or so. Do people actually use nightstand mode on Apple Watch? I totally do. I use it every night. Absolutely. Have you seen the animated series of Spider-Man? No, I have not, but it sounds interesting. Oh, man. Chris Norton super chatted for no reason. He said, hello. Do a live skit. That, I think I've done that kind of stuff before. But see, just talking about leaks is making my nose run. Can you guys give me 1 second? I'm going to grab a tissue, and I'll check in a minute. I have it over here. We've got some. It's allergy season. I don't know if you guys are dealing with the pollen, but I know I am. Okay. Sorry to keep you waiting. Okay. Fake leaks, that would never happen, says James. I know. Why would anyone have anything to gain by sending fake information out there? Yeah, I was getting sick of it, especially when we would cover leaks a lot. My nose is leaking. That's the new thing. We'd cover leaks a lot, and then the event happens, and half the stuff is wrong, and it's like, okay, is there actually that much value? I am allergic. They did this with the 6S Plus before, I think, but it was just a clock. Yeah, just a clock. This one's talking more about, like, widgets and smart home stuff. When do you think the M3 MacBook Air will come, and especially 15-inch M3? Ooh, I don't. It's hard to say because, well, thank you, Alpha, for 22 months. Welcome to my runny nose club. I know, it's ridiculous. Thank you. That's a lot of support, Alpha. Thank you. Basically, most of the rumors right now are all pointing to a 15-inch MacBook Air coming out at Dub. And most of what I've read is pointing to them still having the M2 chip. So if there's a new MacBook Air with an M2 chip launching in a week, then I can't imagine M3 MacBook Air would be that soon. So this is another issue I have with all of the leaks and rumors left and right, is they end up being wrong. At least the long-term ones end up being pushed back and delayed a lot. So if we do get a new MacBook Air that's just bigger, but it has the same chip next week, the likelihood of an M3 MacBook Air coming out in just like 3 months or 4 months doesn't sound right to me. That sounds really bizarre. Jean-Luc Picard, thank you for the super. Why is everybody super chatting? Knock it off. That's enough. He says, love your channel, #1. Don't put me in #1 category. That's too much pressure. I would love to be like your second to last favorite tech YouTuber. And no, I don't game. Sorry, Dwight. I do love The Office, though. Thank you, TA Tech, for a super chat for no reason. Guys, you're being far too kind today. Please, keep your money. What do you think the new macOS is going to be called? I'm still wishing for weed. They joked about it 1 year. I do think it would... Meme culture tends to perform well. I think it would make far better headlines than if they do some basic little macOS mammoth or whatever they want to call it. Just embrace the jokes. Weed is legal now, so might as well call it weed. Paul says, they make my day, and I'm really looking forward to each one because of the amazing atmosphere you create. Greetings from Poland. Oh, thanks, Paul. That's very kind of you to say. Okay. Lord Zero says, we will super chat. Okay, I like it. Thank you. This isn't working. Whenever I ask you guys to stop super chatting, it doesn't work. So maybe I should try asking you to super chat, and then you won't do it. Mac OS Weed, yes, please. Macro Funk says, M2 for the next launch for sure. Just wondering if future Apple would release both sides at once or rely on the 1 year gap. That's a better question. Yeah, like, are they going to have a little middle step where we have the M2 15-inch Air, and then now do you have to wait another year before we get to M3 Air? That seems awfully long because TSMC... Thank you. There's the animation. And a guy named 5 Super Chatting. We just super chatting. Please keep super chatting. I love it. Don't stop super chat. Reverse psychology, maybe. Maybe that'll convince you. Yeah, like TSMC announced that they expected to be manufacturing. So this is not a leak, for the record, so I feel more comfortable talking about it. But TSMC said they expect the first 3nm chips to be manufactured around right now, essentially. Like they thought they would start shipping near the summer of this year / third quarter of 2023. So that's why most people are definitely assuming that the iPhone 15 Pros, at least, not the regular 15s, but the 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max should get the A17 chip, and that will be based on 3nm, and then the first M3 chip should be based on 3nm. It sounds like that would be about ready now, which is, I guess, why maybe something went wrong, because I'm quite confused by the idea of the 15-inch MacBook Air having an M2, but that's what all the rumors are pointing at. So I hope the rumors are wrong, honestly. It would be great if they just refreshed the MacBook Air next week and it has an M3 chip and they update it with a 15-inch model, and you can still get a 13-inch model that also has an M3 chip. That would be like best case scenario, and honestly that would kind of align with what TSMC claimed was going to happen. So hopefully the rumors are wrong. I don't know. Chris Norton super chats because he wants us to continue. Well, thank you. I will keep on streaming. I will keep on making videos as long as you guys keep on watching. So don't feel like you have to super chat for me to live stream. For the record, I would still live stream even if none of you super chatted, just so we're clear. Burkhardt's been a member for 15 months. I can't afford to super chat today. Oh, thank God. No, but I hope you're okay. Gotta save for the Tesla. That's fair. Have I owned a Mac Pro, and what are your opinions on it in general? The supposed leak specs on the Mac Pro. No, I never owned a Mac Pro. I think I had a friend that did growing up. Well, like an older friend. He wasn't like, I was in school and he was like a freelance, not content creator. I mean, he kind of creates content. What would you call the people that make commercials? It was more of a friend of my dad's, but I mean, he was like a little bit young. He was quite a bit younger than my dad, but quite a bit older than me. So he was kind of right in the middle, and I was a big fan of him. I think I've seen him in the live streams in the past, not recently, but a while ago. I won't use his name because I don't want to attract too much attention to him, but I remember checking out his office, and he had a Mac Pro with the whole, I think they were called studio displays. Way back in the day. This was before Apple had the black bezels and everything. They were just aluminum. They had silver bezels and everything, which luckily we've moved on from. But I remember checking it out, and I was like, whoa, you have a Mac Pro. That's so cool. But no, I never owned one myself. I remember really loving the trash can Mac Pro, though. I really wanted that when it came out, but I was a student. I didn't have enough money for it. And I thought, well, maybe one day I can afford it. And I remember playing with the configurator, and I was like, wow, if I maxed out a Mac Pro, it would be $6,000. Oh, my God. Now that's the entry price of the Mac Pro. But I don't know. I feel like it's a bit redundant with the existence of the Mac Studio. Now it feels a little weird because we've got the Mac Mini, which is already very powerful, by the way, with the M2 chip. That can do far more than the entry-level Mac Minis did 10 years ago. Now you can get quite a lot done with just that entry-level model. And okay, not only that, we've got the M2 Mac Mini, we've also got the M2 Pro Mac Mini, which is a little bit on the higher end of the pricing, but you get more ports, you get a faster chip and everything. So that's a really great option for some people that want a pro-grade chip, but they don't want to pay $2,000 plus for the Mac Studio. But then, of course, then you've got the Mac Studio, and you can spec that way up to M1 Ultra and everything. So it goes way, way up there. So now where does the Mac Pro fit and everything? I kind of struggle to see the point, especially now that ARM architecture, I think, has proven to have its own set of limitations. So I know there's certain use cases like people who want discrete GPUs because they do 3D modeling. Ian Zelbo comes to mind because I know he does all of his renderings on this custom-built PC and everything. And I'm like, okay, there's certain workflows that just require raw power. And Apple Silicon from the ground up is just not optimized for that kind of raw power. It's like a lot of efficiency trickery to get very common use cases covered, like video editing or like audio editing or software engineering, like writing code in Xcode and stuff. It's really helpful for all kinds of things, but there's still some edge cases where Apple Silicon falls short for some people. I don't think Apple could really make something that would please them, though, is the problem. Like, they're going to want something customizable or something that supports the ray tracing or the has the RTX labeling or branding or has the graphic card capability that they want. And I just don't visualize an Apple-made machine that is compatible with these graphics cards that those use cases are looking for. So I don't really think there's a point, to be honest. I mean, honestly, I would have called the Mac Studio the Mac Pro. Like, at least if you go back and look at what the Mac Pro market used to be, it was really not meant for, like, enterprise industrial use, like, built into server racks, at least not that often. I mean, that's why they designed the trash can Mac Pro the way they did. But I guess people didn't like that, so that's not a good example. But essentially, I feel like those big companies, those big enterprises, they're using custom software, they're using custom hardware. I don't know why Apple feels they want to tackle that market. Like Alpha's saying, how many people are actually spending $50,000 on a Mac Pro? You know, how big is that market? And is that, I'm not saying 0 people bought it. I'm just saying it's likely one of the lowest markets. It's one of the smallest markets that Apple caters to, that they have an option for. So for that market, does Apple need to spend time, money, engineering, and marketing? Do they want to designate part of their keynote, which has millions of people watching, to a market that is that small? My guess as to why Apple is not doing much with the Mac Pro is because the sales for it are not really that big. Sure, there's a couple YouTubers that buy it that have enough money that they can afford to just buy a maxed out Mac Pro because they know the video about that Mac Pro will probably cover the price. So those certain big YouTubers like MKBHD, they can afford to spend all that money. But outside of the big channels, which there's at best 5 to 15 of them, you know, how many people are buying that, especially once it's come out? Like, you know, they're aware of the industry, so they buy it when it's new and then never again. Do you still need to manufacture them on a regular basis? Yeah, I think you're better off pitching more towards just the studio, like self-employed people working from home, or smaller businesses that just need a machine that's reasonably powerful but still, you know, sub $15,000 at least as a setup. And I feel like the Mac Studio kind of occupies a lot of that market already. I mean, Marquez being the great example, he switched to a Mac Studio. He's not using his Intel Mac Pro anymore. So likely a lot of people have made the switch from their Intel Mac Pro to now the Mac Studio because in many ways it's faster and higher performing. So how many people are we targeting when we're saying how many people are not satisfied with the Mac Studio? They want something even more powerful. I can't visualize that's a huge market, and there's certain markets that you just have to admit this is too niche for us to actually cater to. So, excuse me, man. I haven't sneezed once today, and I walked outside. I was walking with my dad through nature and everything, and I didn't sneeze a single time until just now when I sat down. It's funny. Let's see. I never owned a trash can Mac Pro though. I always preferred the all-in-one design. I always loved iMacs because I didn't like towers. I didn't like having little boxes everywhere. That's also why I don't have a NAS, server or whatever. I just like having everything I need within one enclosure, and I have even more of that with my MacBook Pro because it actually has a battery and I can take it with me. $50K for a $2 to $5 million company is nothing. Yeah, but that a $2 to $5 million company is gonna have to buy a lot more than one computer, and they're likely using more custom software and more custom hardware than Apple can offer. I don't think a $5 million company just buys one high-end computer to do one thing. They have their own custom builds and servers, and they're probably not going to be too worried about power efficiency. So I think it's a little bit niche. And no, I still have the M1 iPad Pro right off camera here. You can tell because of its bizarre camera system. Everybody was tweeting about this. It made me laugh. They thought I had some kind of prototype iPad hardware, but nope, it's just a poorly optimized case. Do you think the periscope lens in the 15 Pro will have a variable optical zoom lens like the Sony Xperia 1 Mark V? That's a mouthful. No. I think that is expensive and also probably doesn't scale very well. Sony does not make very many of those phones. And to be honest with you, I watched videos on that phone with the variable optical zoom. I wasn't that impressed. Like, okay, yeah, you get exactly that zoom and you don't have to pinch in and crop in on the sensor at all. But it didn't look that much better than just a phone that didn't have a variable optical zoom. I'm pretty sure the periscope lens Apple is buying is probably from Sony, but I'm pretty sure it's very similar to the lenses that they put in the Galaxy Ultra phones. It's just with iPhone branding on it. This is why I'm less excited about iPhones these days. It's all kind of manufactured by the same companies anyway. And then it's just waiting around for one company to copy from the other company. Like Pixel tablet comes out, hey, I want Apple to do that. Or Samsung has some periscope lens, hey, I want Apple to do that. When Apple does it, it'll be cool, and then I'll actually use it because I don't want to switch to Android. So Alpha says, the majority of Apple Silicon's benefits are found in the MacBooks. I had to make an emergency video out in the middle of forest. Yeah, I watched that one with a near-dead laptop, yet I still had full performance. Crazy. Yeah, I think Apple probably was aware of that. There was a lot of benefits, of course, to switching to Apple Silicon, like the efficiency and the battery life and the performance, but probably some of the drawbacks came from high-end desktop computing and modularity. Making the switch to ARM probably makes it a little more complicated to make the computer DIY. Like, you can take it apart or you can add modules to it because it's all a system on a chip, right? You can't put all this stuff around it anymore. It's all supposed to be integrated, and all the RAM and the CPU and the GPU are all put together so the electrons don't have to travel as fast or as far, and that results in it being more power efficient. But Apple, I think, made the right call. I think that's a worthy trade-off because, yeah, Apple sells way more laptops than they do desktops. I think desktops are kind of a dying breed. They've been on the decline for years, and they are likely continuing to be on the decline because laptops are just getting so good. Before, it was like, if you buy a laptop, you're getting such a compromised performance experience that for a lot of people, it's not worth it, so they just go with a desktop for their heavy lifting. But now when laptops can do as heavy lifting as they do, it's like, yeah, why are we fussing around with desktops still? Yeah, I agree with Burkhardt. Apple Silicon makes desktops mostly pointless for the vast majority of people. Yeah, there's a handful of people that can still justify a desktop, but it's definitely a shrinking demographic, which is why Apple has not released the Mac Pro yet. And if you want to base what's happening at DubDub on the leaks or the rumors, I'm pretty sure the latest rumor is that they're pushing back the Mac Pro again. But I don't think they're in a rush to release it because essentially, if you look at the existing Mac lineup of Apple Silicon, it's pretty strong as is. There's pretty much something for everybody, except I guess those who want an iMac Pro or people who want a more modular Mac Pro. But I don't think the people who want a modular Mac Pro are going to be happy with the Apple Silicon Mac Pro because it's likely not going to be very modular. Back when I bought my iMac Pro, there were a lot of compromises for going with a MacBook. So that's why I ended up switching to a desktop. But now that the 2021 MacBook Pros have come out, there's very little compromises. In fact, there's a lot of advantages to switching to a MacBook that you wouldn't get on a desktop, like the integrated mini LED ProMotion display, which is great. The microphones, the speakers are fantastic. The battery life's great. You get a bunch of perks when you go mobile that you wouldn't get with a desktop. What would an Apple Silicon Mac Pro even look like at this point? There's been rumors from Mark Gurman. I think Mark Gurman also did the whole title of this live stream, iOS 17 may turn iPhone into a little smart hub for your nightstand. I like that idea, by the way. I would love to see that incorporated, and it would probably require MagSafe, but it seems like a good idea. It's a pretty big, reasonably large display as more and more people are buying the larger phones that can show a lot of information. And a lot of the time we just kind of leave it on a charger and it's sitting there with power, and it can give you a lot of widgets that our alarm clocks used to show us. I think a lot of people don't use alarm clocks anyway because they just check their phone, but there's absolutely a great way to mount it in a way that you don't have to pick the phone up or anything, that it's also charging but also delivering information. Because, our smartphones are not useful enough, right? And I heard about the trade-in leak that a bunch of MacBooks Macs will be available to trade in at Dub, which makes sense because there's rumored to be a Mac release there, at least one, a 15-inch MacBook Air. But Chris Norton super chatted again. Geez, thanks. I love my desktop. I had a laptop and didn't use it. Well, I think for people in your particular use case, it probably makes more sense. But it just depends on the workflow. For some people, desktops make a lot of sense, but I think the main reason a lot of people are going laptop now is because it's very easy to, like for me, my MacBook stays on my desk for days, sometimes weeks at a time without moving. And, that's the nice thing about it, is that a laptop can very easily become a desktop. There's pretty affordable monitors these days that you can just plug that laptop in. And we've got HDMI back, right? And we've got Thunderbolt if you want a really nice monitor to plug into. So you can make a laptop into a desktop, but it's a lot harder to turn a desktop into a laptop. So like a laptop can do both, but a desktop can't. So for me, sometimes even though I'll go weeks with my MacBook just always plugged in, it's still very handy and very convenient to be able to disconnect it and take it with me, like when I go on my big trip soon. Be nice if iPad would get that nightstand mode. Oh, wait, that requires the iPad OS team to actually do work. Alpha, you sound too much like me. I think you've been watching too much Tailosive Tech. What kind of watch band is that, and how was it? I stuck with my Clover Green band for Series 7. It's just a product red sport loop. It's kind of basic, but red's my favorite color. So I'm back. I'm back after I reviewed the Pixel 7a. I've switched back to my good old trusty iPhone SE, which is beautiful. And that means I get to wear my Apple Watch again. So I actually haven't worn my watch for several weeks, and now I'm coming back to it. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's fun. I forgot how much I love my Apple Watch. I was kind of getting used to not wearing it after a while. And then I put it back on. I was like, man, these things are handy. I did my whole video on how hard it is to leave the ecosystem. I feel like I should do a whole new video. Why it's so easy to stay in the ecosystem. It's because everything just works. Everything works so well. Well, it's easy to watch Out of Spec Motoring more than this channel, because Out of Spec Motoring uploads like way more than I do. I watch more Out of Spec Motoring than I watch my own video. Gaming is the one area where desktop still remain as the preferred option. Well, desktop gaming is the preferred option for desktop gaming. You're correct, but the vast majority of gaming is done on smartphones. Do we want to go down that train again? I feel like that never ends well. This is why I kind of don't like talking gaming, is because people get really defensive and gatekeep. "Oh, that's not real gaming. Real gaming requires a RTX 4090 where I'm playing at 4K 120 FPS with RGB keyboard." Yeah, sorry, I forgot. That's real gaming. Nathan, why are you super chatting? Can I get a hearty roll tide? I don't know if that's how you wanted me to say it, but any tips on updating AirPods without a max? Without a max? What are you trying to say? No, I don't. You say AirPods without, like, you don't have AirPods Max, but you want to update them? I don't remember the trick. I think you just leave them nearby your iPhone and leave them plugged in their case, I think. I don't know if that answers. I was singing that in the style of Rawhide. I don't think that's what you wanted, but AJ super chatted Clown OS for iPad Pro. You really love that Clown OS meme, huh? You just keep bringing that. But I will admit, I was quite burnt out. I took some time off this morning and yesterday, so I kind of got some time to relax. But after last week, first of all, Final Cut for iPad came out, and I watched the reviews, and I was disappointed. And everyone asked me to review it myself, which I didn't really want to, but the news was so dry anyway, so I was like, fine, I guess I'll review it. So I had to get this M1 iPad because, of course, it didn't come to my old iPad, which is totally understandable and fair. Thank you, Apple, for being so reasonable. And I got the M1 iPad Pro, and it was late, and it was stressing me out because I can't delay this product too far because we're going to be gone soon. And I got them one iPad Pro late. I set it up and I tried to edit a video on it, and it left in all these mistakes that I edited out, so it made the pixel review suck. And then I wanted to explain why I think Final Cut on the iPad sucks, and the whole thing was just it took forever to edit, and I had to go into all this detail, and I was kind of exhausted. I was kind of really tired, and I was like, it's kind of I'm just kind of done with this whole iPad thing. And now that it's still like, it feels like for years we keep saying the same thing, it kind of gets repetitive to just keep saying, well, iPad's still missing this though, and I want it to have this. And after 5 years of talking about how I wish the iPad would do something better, I'm kind of just ready to give up on it. I'm kind of like, nah, I'm not interested in an iPad at this point unless it runs Mac OS, honestly. Like, that's the only point in which I would consider checking one out again, or buying one again, to be honest. I think I've said that in the past, and I will stand by this opinion. If I buy an iPad again, it will need to replace my MacBook. And I understand that may never happen. Like, because now that I can do all of my video thumbnails with subject lift on my SE2, and I'm editing all of my videos on the amazing MacBook Pro, which has great specs, great ports, great speakers, and I use it for so much. It's just so capable. It's made the iPad very redundant for me, to the point that I'm like, okay, I'm tired of iPads trying to pretend to be professional but still not give you the full unlocked thing and yet charge you so much for it, that I would rather tablets just be tablets. Like, to me, the best iPad in the lineup is the iPad mini. iPad mini 6 is great. Like, it's affordable. It's great for people that want note-taking because you can hold it in one hand and the pencil in the other. You can draw on it. I've watched people draw on it. I've seen my friend Mike has one, and he's drawn great stuff with it. Like, Apple Pencil features are, I think, all the iPad is really good for. I wouldn't recommend you buy it for anything else. Media consumption, not really. I mean, I know people that bought iPads for that and they end up not using them. That's the reason I don't recommend it, by the way, is because I've seen so many family members buy them and then never use them because they end up just going with their phone, because their phone screen's getting bigger and bigger, and the phone is just more convenient. It fits in their pocket, fits in one hand. A tablet is a bit of a bigger commitment anyway, so I don't even subscribe to it for the whole, well, it's a bigger phone, so you can have two apps running at the same time. Yeah. It's just swipe back and forth on your iPhone. It's not that hard. Come on. So the note taking, drawing, that's it. That's all I'll give it. And in that case, buy the cheapest one you can. Don't buy the $800 one or the $600 one. Get something affordable. What if the iPad had a triple camera setup? That honestly, I think, is a smart way to go if you're trying to just make the iPad fundamentally limited by software but has great hardware. Then yeah, I don't understand why they don't put a 15 Pro Max camera system on the iPad. That's not as overkill as the M2 chip in the iPad is. As a student and student pilot, I use the iPad for studying and for charting flights. It's the best device for everything. Well, I like the first part of what you said. I disagree with the second part you said. I would argue it's the best device for nothing. It does everything a little bit, but nothing great, except note-taking. Which do I believe is the best cycle for upgrading your iPhone? 3, 4, 5 years? No, I don't. There's no right answer to that. That entirely depends on the person, how you use the phone, and what your budget is. For some people, it could easily be way over 5 years. I think depending on your budget and what you use your phone for. Like my friend Ross, a very close friend of mine, he's still using my iPhone 7 that I sold to him way back when I switched to the iPhone 10. It was the original iPhone 7 Plus that I reviewed on this channel and everything, and I was done with it. So, and he needed a phone. He was still using an iPhone 4, I think, or something. It was really old, and he was like, yeah, I'll buy that phone off you if you don't want it anymore. I said, sure. So I forget what it was. It was a pretty low price. It was like, I think half what I paid for it or something. But yeah, I sold it to him. He still uses it to this day. And that was 5 years ago now, and he's still using it. He's replaced the battery in it several times, and he's happy. He's like, yeah, that's great. Like, it works. He's fine with it. We were filming some stuff for a Tailosive that you guys won't see probably till next year, but we were filming some stuff together, and he got a phone call on it, and it's all banged up, and he doesn't have a case or anything. He doesn't care. He like embraces the damages on the phone, and he was working on a camera, and he just takes the phone and puts it on the asphalt while he's talking on the phone. He just went, and I was like, putting a bare phone with no case just straight on the asphalt. I was like, okay, well, he's happy. He doesn't mind that. He's like, whatever. It's, it's the phone. It's functional. It's a tool. It's not about having the latest, greatest one. It's just, I use that one until it doesn't work anymore. But for some people, I know a photographer friend that bought a 1 terabyte iPhone 14 Pro, and he uses his phone for communicating with clients, and he's also just became a father, so he's taking pictures of his kid all the time and stuff. So he wanted a really, really nice camera that he could take with him, and he appreciates the ProRes and the RAW photography because he likes, the post-processing and the color correction and stuff. And, he can afford it. He's got a salary that can maintain buying expensive phones like that, but he'll probably hold on to it for many years. I don't think he's a upgrade once a year type guy, but yeah, it totally depends on the person. There's not a one size fits all. I think the average, last time I saw the statistics for it, was around 3 or 4 is how long most people wait. But I think that's constantly changing. Like, I think the phones that we buy today will probably age better than the phones we bought 5 years ago. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they just got bigger batteries and better cameras and better displays and they're made of better materials and stronger this or that, or they're thicker, so they're harder to bend and crack and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that we could easily see that average stretch into the 5-year, 6-year, 7-year mark. Where people start holding on to iPhones for a very, very long time, especially when there's so little changes year over year. Let's see. If I hold the iPad mini in one hand, I cannot take notes with the other hand. I had nothing to do with size. It's just the fact I can only use one hand. That's fair, James. I think you're the exception, but you're absolutely right for yourself. I want to get rid of iPad, but I like the Apple Pencil and Sidecar too much. I couldn't get Sidecar working properly, but maybe I need to give it another shot because I'm thinking about giving my iMac to my grandma because she's still using this really old PC and it just doesn't work all that well. Um, let's see. Anyone else have a 13 Pro from around launch? My battery is at 86% health. That's really good, actually. That's a high health. Batteries still don't last, but you can replace the battery. You don't have to replace the phone. Chris Norton super chatted. I use my iPad for reading. It kills my phone battery. Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like these days the phone battery is usually higher than the iPad battery, but I'm glad it's good for reading. It makes a lot of sense. I was really concerned with image video quality. I would probably buy a mirrorless camera. Yeah, I think iPhone's replacing a lot of cameras for people. So I can understand why some people just want the best camera possible. I don't really relate to it. Like, I think you'd be fine using last. I think a 13 Pro camera is still amazing. Like, I don't think you necessarily will notice a huge difference between the 14 Pro and the 13 Pro, but yeah, I know people like my good friend Nick, who works in Starbase, Texas, taking pictures of rockets. He just has admitted, like, I will always want the best possible camera on my phone because he just wants to take the best possible quality photos that are point and shoot. Even though he owns really expensive, really high-end cameras, he wants to ensure that the camera in his pocket is as best as it could possibly be. So he will probably always upgrade to the latest iPhone as soon as it comes out. And it works out for him because his birthday is like mid-September. So pretty much every time it's his birthday, a new iPhone comes out. So it's like a perfect little syncing up of birthday present / new iPhone thing. My dad and I both got 13 Pros at the same time, and his is at 92%. Oh, that's an interesting experiment, yeah. The iPad lives on article on Apple News. No, I don't think the iPad will be killed off. I think I've explained that many times. Apple camera team would have a field day if they could build an Apple camera. I know! I want that so bad. I cannot express that enough. Just look at... I think you could make, like, probably one of the best digital cameras, at least. The smaller, like, consumer accessible cameras in the world if you took the machine learning algorithms that they've gathered from the iPhone and the deep fusion and that smart HDR crap that they've been pushing for years and everything, all of the smartphone trickery that they've learned from the iPhone. But if you gave that same team that is usually bunched into a corner and has to work with tiny camera sensors this small, and you said, okay, now you can make a full-on camera that's, at least the size of my Blackmagic back there, something that you could hold like this, something that's, not IMAX camera level size or expense, but, something that everyday people could buy if they were really into videography or photography. And then it would have AirDrop, it would have Thunderbolt and this whole Final Cut compatibility. It could have the Find My network, it could have biometrics, it could have a great UI, ProRes RAW and all that, and lenses that you could take off and add, and especially if it was a full frame sensor. Oh man, I feel like they would smoke the camera industry. It's probably not big enough for Apple to be interested in it. They want to just keep making Apple TV Plus originals or more memberships for us to sign up for. But oh man, they are in such a good position if they wanted to tackle that market. Let's see. Never checked my battery health frequently, just like using my Android, just checking the screen on time frequently. I keep waiting for my battery health on the SE2 to dip, and it's still at 78%. What color is my watch, and which one is it? It's the Series 7 Graphite 45mm. Same watch. I've had that since 2021. We're still here. Was thinking of a refurbished iPad Pro 2020, but my iPad Pro 16 still works well for note-taking. Yeah, I don't think you need a whole new iPad just for note-taking. Come on. I use my iPad Pro for entertainment, music, and photos and screenshots. I take lots of screenshots of skyscrapers for Minecraft, so it's easy on the iPad because of the big screen. Yeah, there you go. I guess it's probably better at doing that than a MacBook would. MacBook optimization for all that stuff gets a little weird. iPad's kind of just mobile apps on a bigger screen, but Minecraft is pretty much the same on the mobile app, so that makes sense. Everyone's doing the battery health check-in. Shabuya roll call. My name is... what is it? AC, yeah, I have a 13 Pro. Yeah, it's at 94%. Yeah, but it's a year old. Shabuya, yeah, that's it. Gonna have the live chat. Everybody tell your battery health now. What do I think about the 12 Pro camera? It's fine. They're all great. Obviously, the newer ones have a handful of new features, but no, my wife uses an iPhone 11, and I interact with that phone a lot because she tends to have the better camera than I do. And when she takes pictures with it, I look at them. I'm like, yeah, that's beautiful. It looks awesome. Entertainment, music. Oh, sorry, I read that. Okay. I considered getting rid of my iPad, but now that I'm going back to college in August, I'll have a use case for it again. It's just been a YouTube machine for me since November. Yeah, I can't even say mine's been a YouTube machine per se, but it seems to be much more popular among students, because I think in the education world, you're more likely to be taking notes. So maybe it's because I've not been in an education system for years that I just don't. The main reason I got the Apple Pencil was for video thumbnails. I was doing photo editing, and it was really helpful for masking objects, because that was a really common thing for me when designing thumbnails, was masking out the edges of things. But then Subject Lift came out and definitely killed a ton of the functionality for my iPad, because now it was like, wait, I can just select the subject of pretty much any photo and an almost perfect cutout is made every time. Why do I need to fuss around with the Apple Pencil anymore? Like, what was the point? Bought an Apple polishing cloth for my MacBook screen. Don't trust any other cloth. I bet Apple's using it. Apple doesn't manufacture that cloth. I bet another company uses the exact same factory line. Apple just pays to have their logo put on there. But yeah, Jasmine showed up in the chat, so now I think it's a good time to address some of her questions. We got some Tailosive Tech Pro questions before this live stream went live, so I'll just go chronologically, because why not? As someone who wants the best battery life but doesn't want the max model, is there a way one can get used to the bigger form factor? How does one get comfortable using a phone that big? Sounds like a skill issue to me. No, I don't really have any good advice for that, other than I guess I've been still toying around in reviewing the absurd Doogee brick phone here. And what I've learned is just being more intentional about using it. Using it with two hands is a bit easier when you've got two thumbs to work with instead of just the one-handed stuff. That's about it. I think you can pretty much get used to anything if you just hold it for a while. I know it's uncomfortable, but just keep doing it, and you'll get used to it before you know it. That's one thing I've noticed switching between phones a lot, because I had a 13 Pro Max, and then an iPhone 10, and then an SE2, and then a Pixel, and now this, and I'm kind of reviewing a bunch of phones at once here, and I've noticed how it all starts to blend together. Your brain just kind of resets after a while. Like, the first impression is, whoa, oh my god, this is so tiny, how do I live with this? But if you use it for a couple hours, you just hold it a little closer and you get accustomed to it, and then you don't even think about it. So I'd just say try it. I don't think it necessarily results in a huge difference. Thank you again, Chris Norton. Way too many super chats. My 11 Pro battery health is at 85. That's actually really good. That's a good health. Yeah, just as a reminder for those wondering, a normal battery degradation rate would be 10% a year. So if after 2 years of ownership you're at 80%, that is normal. If you have better than that, then that means you're definitely good. It's lasting longer than it's supposed to. Good Notes is literally the only reason I use my iPad. That's fair. This is I forget what it's the Doogee S100 Pro, but it's by far the heaviest phone I've ever used. So I've got some fun videos prepared for this phone. Look at this light. I'm blinding everyone. I'm probably permanently damaging my MacBook webcam, but it gets crazy bright. It gives you a pop-up every time you open the app. Do not shine into eyes when camping light is on. It's bad for camping. Anyway, yeah, it's very heavy, but I could get used to it just with time, and usually I just use it with two hands. Maybe you don't want to do that, but oh well. Um, Let me address the next question here. Which tech YouTuber do you think has the most underrated production? Man, I'd have a better answer for you if I actually watch tech videos. I genuinely don't. Most of my videos are EV. And I also think the question is itself is, I don't know if you're referring to the production as in like the camera work and the editing and what have you, because personally I think people put too much weight in that. Like most of the time when you really like a YouTuber, it tends to be because of their ideas or perspectives or what they said about something. Rarely does it really come down to, well, I watch him because he has high quality videos. Just they're shot really well and the audio is really good. You know, it's like you gotta prioritize that to an extent. If it's hard to see you and hard to hear you, people don't want to watch you. But I tend to think that the ideas and the opinions are ultimately what matters more than the production of it. You know, like how high quality was this? Like we mentioned, Alpha mentioned earlier, both of us are watching a lot of the out of spec motoring, out of spec reviews channels because we're more into electric vehicle content as far as it. Like I was just watching Dirty Tesla right before I went live. He uploaded a video yesterday on FSD Beta, and I was just watching that before I went live. And they're filming most of this stuff with phones. Most of this stuff is just shot on a phone, and it's not the most high quality production stuff, but it works. You know, it's just it looks nice, and it doesn't have to be cinematic per se because like we're reviewing a car here. We're not trying to be the next Chris Nolan, you know. We're not trying to impress, you know, Hollywood with our cinematography. Some people are really into that. Some people really like, ooh, how do we get the color correction right? How do we get the panning shot just right? And to me, sometimes it becomes too big a distraction where it's like if the video is shot too high end, you're not even really listening to the opinions anymore. You're just watching it for the sake of how much money can this person blow on their cameras and lighting and microphones. And there's a certain amount of talent and creativity involved for sure, but like one channel's opinion about a phone versus another channel's opinion on a phone isn't really going to sway me because, well, he makes a better point because he shot his video a lot better. Like, you know, content and character. That, yeah, I guess there's a separation there. But yeah, Nikias has always shot really nice stuff. But I tend to focus more on what is the creator saying, what's their perspective. And that stands out to me more, I guess. I'm not that impressed. Usually I'm actually these days more annoyed when the production is really high quality and over the top because it tends to result in the video taking more time. Now I have to sit through some more cinematography to get to the point, or now I gotta wait around for more of that, or I'm more distracted by the cinematography. Or the other thing is, like, obviously Apple and Google or whoever, Samsung, they have the far larger marketing budget than really any YouTuber does, except Mr. Beast. But a lot of Mr. Beast stuff is shot on, you know, GoPros and iPhones anyway. But like when Apple markets an iPhone, it looks super professional and high end because they want you to buy it. So they want the iPhone to look as good as possible. But when you get really high production value, high quality with your content creating, if it gets high enough, you end up just looking like a commercial. It's like, wow, that looks like Google themselves filmed the Pixel. And it's like, great, now I'm just watching an ad? Like, it's on par with the advertising budget, which we see high budget ads all the time. That doesn't make me want the service anymore, you know. It's kind of refreshing to see the product in a more real life scenario. It makes it feel more grounded than watching it in this, you know, bright white infinite room or in this top-down shot that makes it look cooler than it really is. So I guess I don't have a good answer for you. But I don't know why this came to mind, but everyone I talk to tends to tell me that Flossie Carter is super underrated. And I think because of what he says, not necessarily super high production budget, but he just tells it how it is, and I see people referencing him all the time, and I think he deserves more credit because of the character, not so much the content of how high budget is the video quality. Why girls still buy film cameras when they have iPhones? Do people do that? There's a novelty to film cameras. I don't know what you mean by just girls. My brother-in-law still takes film shots of things, and Nick does on occasion too. They have film cameras where they, expose the light. And film has a naturally different look to it. It doesn't capture light in the same way a digital camera does. So it's kind of a hobby thing. It's kind of like people who collect vinyl records. There's a certain sound quality difference. So, yeah, I understand that. I don't know where you got the idea that that's just a girl thing. But even so, there's definitely an advantage to shooting on film. It's less convenient, but a lot of photographers would argue it makes the image look more real, more gritty. Religious appropriation of gender, race, politics. Wow, let's get into that, YJ. What do you think will be the tech audience's limit of tolerance for tech YouTubers who increasingly rely on clickbait, sensationalism, exaggerated thumbnail faces, or do you think they'll continue to get clicks and game engagement like they currently do? That's a great question, YJ. That kind of ties into the whole YouTuber discussion we were making earlier. But yeah, Margell agrees. Flossie Carter makes super long, in-depth videos, which is why people like him so much. I appreciate that. I like going in depth. I like diving into the nitty-gritty details. That's why I like live streaming, is so I can get into more depth and not just try to summarize all my answers into 2 sentences. That's why I can't do the shorts content very much. I can do a couple of videos in under 60 seconds, but honestly, I struggle to keep videos under 10 minutes. And if I'm not careful, I'll make a 30-minute video like the last one on Final Cut. It's like there's just way too many little details, especially for a video editing app, which people use in so many different ways. And I watched a bunch of reviews on Final Cut for iPad, and I was like, everyone's just kind of summarizing the basics. And this is an application that some people are thinking, do I need to buy an entire M1 or M2 iPad just so that I can try this app? And I was like, if you're going to go through the work of buying the iPad, getting the app and trying it out, and then finding out that maybe one of the 2 features that you were really hoping for aren't there, that's really important. So I felt like I had to go into a lot of depth, even though it resulted in the video being way longer than I probably should have made it or would have liked to have been. It isn't like performing great for the algorithm either, but I kind of didn't care how it performed. I was just focused on like, people need to know the state of this app before they go out and buy a new iPad, just for that. So as far as what's the audience's tolerance of the clickbait and the exaggeration, I have not seen it hit, to be honest. Like, I still don't understand how outside of the tech community I see super clickbaity, super deceptive video titles and thumbnails, and they still get tons of views. I'm not going to say who, but there are tons of channels, you guys can think of them yourself, that just put straight up lies, that just put up straight up the most incorrect, wrong, deceptive title and thumbnail possible, and it gets tons of views. In fact, it gets way more views than my videos get. So it's like a lie can be fabricated. A lie can be whatever you want it to be to better the algorithm or better the performance of the video. So in my view, as long as there's still people clicking on those or gullible enough to keep watching them, they're going to keep making them. And even though that may not be everybody on YouTube is clicking on those, there's enough of them that they can get away with it. And in the YouTube space right now, I wish there was something YouTube could do about this, but you are basically rewarded for deception. And another way of looking at that, in my opinion, is you are penalized for truth, like financially. You're not penalized in the sense that you get a community strike or something, but you objectively make less money on YouTube if you focus on trying to make the title and thumbnail as honest as possible, and you are rewarded for deception and lying in the title and thumbnail. Like you get extra credit for that. You get paid bonus money for not telling the truth. So as long as that continues to be the case, I don't think audiences are going to stop clicking. It's just too easy. And because there's not a way for Apple or Google or whoever to dispute any of those claims immediately, um, it's all leaks, right? It's all rumors. So technically, we're not committing to it, but in the moment, you can say confirmed, you can say revealed, you can say here it is, here you go, whatever you want to say. And because there's no official statement from Apple PR or whatever saying no, that's not true, then it might as well be true to those viewers. It's like, well, it might as well be happening for real, and that gets you excited and that gets you pumped. And then at the last second, because you're comfortable lying or you're comfortable leaking things, if your leak ends up being wrong, once it is proven wrong, you can say, oh, well, Apple changed their mind, I guess, because obviously my source was correct, but at the last second, you can talk your way out of anything. And unfortunately, a lot of audiences will believe you on that because they just, I guess, assume the best of you or assume you're trustworthy. Oh, okay, I guess Apple changed their mind last second. So you were right all along, but you just couldn't have predicted that Apple changed their mind at the last second. So it's like, okay, that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to stop covering leaks, at least in video form, because I ran polls on covering video leaks, and 80% of my audience, or 80% of the people who voted, were in favor of, keep talking about leaks. And a lot of you, I think, were saying that I watch you not because I believe all the leaks, but it's because I want to know which leaks are believable and which ones aren't. Like, I want your perspective on the leak. I'm not clicking for the leak. And I appreciate that. I hope that's the case for most people, but even then, I still felt icky in my heart. I just felt like I was profiting off of what was potentially fake news. I'm not saying all of the leaks and rumors were fabricated, but it was getting to the point where it was impossible to tell. Where it was like, okay, if back to back, day after day, you're saying one thing and then the next day you say another, that way, no matter what happens, you can say I was right or that was rumored to happen. Now there's a lot of financial motivation for news channels and leakers to make stuff up because they can reverse it at a moment's notice and lose no credibility to the audiences. So I was like, I don't want to get used to that. I don't like that business strategy. And most of my heart is in the EV channel now anyway, so I'm kind of okay if the tech channel doesn't perform that great or not that many people watch the tech videos. I'm fine. I'm not trying to grow here. If anything, I'm trying to shrink my channel size because I don't have that belief of bigger is better. Bigger channel means better content. Like if I was a channel with 10 million subs, I don't think I could interact with you guys as closely as I do. It wouldn't be possible, and I like being able to recognize people in the chat, and like James Sander and YJ and Margel, and Beauty Natiri. I recognize you guys in Alpha, and there's some of you that I've been keeping up with on Twitter DMs, and we just talk about life or things that are going on, and it feels like I've just got a great group of friends, and I don't want to lose that essentially. Chris, sorry, there's super chats I gotta keep up. Thank you guys, you're being way too kind today. Chris Ostwick says, I'm thinking about swapping out my 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 Pro for the MacBook Air 15-inch when it's released. 16-inch, too bulky and don't need the power. Is this a good idea? Too bulky and don't need the power. I don't know. I really like that. I'm using that MacBook right now. I'm reading your message on that MacBook. It's a great MacBook, which is why I have a hard time saying, like, yeah, it's a good idea, but you sound like you're not happy with it. So, skill issue? Lift more, get more in shape because it's not that heavy. Come on, you can do it. No, that's not what you want to hear. I would say it's a good idea if it won't cost you anything. I don't know which M1 Pro variant you got, but if there's a way you could sell your 16-inch MacBook Pro and replace it for the 15-inch MacBook Air at no additional charge, I would feel better about that. But if it's going to cost you money, it doesn't feel like a good idea. Like you're paying extra to downgrade, essentially. And I've tried to establish that in previous videos as well. It's like let's reserve paying extra for things for upgrading, Like, okay, if you're going to spend more money on a laptop or more money on your watch or your phone or headphones, it should be because you're getting a better one, right? I don't think you should be spending more money so that you can get worse hardware. But I guess in your mind, maybe it's better hardware because you just want it to be thinner and lighter. But that's such a, to me, that, I don't know. How annoying is it, Chris? How bad is it for you? I would argue that it's probably not that bad, and it's not worth the expense because there's a decent chance your M1 Pro 16 inches is gotten devalued a bit by the new MacBook Pros, and that it has cycles and everything, that you might not be able to sell it for the price the 15-inch Air costs. So I would do whatever's cheaper personally. Connor super chatted, is there a difference between 1080p premium and 2160p on YouTube? Why pay for premium when we get higher quality for free? I have no idea. I have not found any YouTube video that has 1080p premium on it. I haven't clicked on it, and my phone doesn't support 1080p anyway, so I'm going to say there's next to zero difference. That's my guess, but I don't have any proof to back that up. And to me, the YouTube Premium has nothing to do with the quality playback. That is not why you should subscribe to Premium. Most people watch YouTube at 1080p non-premium. The whole reason you should go with YouTube Premium, in my opinion, is for getting rid of ads on YouTube, which is super useful, and downloads is really cool, and also it supports creators more. There's a lot of memberships out there, and there's a lot of expensive ones. I'm not trying to say YouTube Premium is cheap, but at least YouTube Premium, like, I have a whole section in YouTube Analytics designated to, here's all the money you've made from YouTube Premium subscriptions. So I like the idea that I watch more YouTube than anything, right? I don't watch Netflix. I don't watch much Prime. I don't watch Disney Plus or any of that. I don't watch HBO, or now it's just Max, whatever. I don't really watch much of that stuff. And when you pay for those memberships, you are just sending money to big, giant corporations and their memberships. And I guess through some long, indirect chain that eventually gets to the people who are making the productions you're watching. But because I enjoy videos about real people and real services and products and how they're reviewing them and what they think of them, and I want to support more of that, YouTube Premium money goes towards the individual. I think it's a little bit more direct than the whole, you pay for Disney Plus, and a lot of that money goes to Disney so they can be the studio, and then some of that money pays a few people on set. But I would argue YouTube, even though it's not really employees, it's, independent contractors or whatever people, YouTubers are not YouTube employees. There's a difference. But there's way more people, I think, making a living by posting videos to YouTube than there is people employed by Disney Plus shows or Netflix shows. I don't know, actually. I think there's more people making money on YouTube than there is. But at least I think this is the better way to do it, is to have more independence and let people make what they want to make, let them have control over the content they make rather than being told what a big producer wants to make. I want to make a new Little Mermaid movie, so we're all going to make that now because we own that intellectual property, that kind of thing. If our phone screens aren't 4K, what are they, and why does Apple lie about it? They don't lie about it. When did they say they lie about it? It'd be one thing if they said it was a 4K display and it wasn't, but no, they give you the exact resolution in tech specs. The 1080p premium, I think, jumps the bitrate from 6,000 to 13,000. I don't think most people would even notice that, Riley. I would like to hear someone claim they can see the difference, but I don't get it. Alpha says, if it helps, I travel with my 16-inch all the time. The weight of my baggage makes the weight of my laptop seem negligible. Yeah, I don't understand the whole 16 inches too bulky. It ain't that annoying to... Chris responded, oh, that's good. He said, it ain't that annoying to be fair. Just wanted something a little more travelable. I don't get it. I think it's super light and thin, personally. 16-inch MacBook Pro is still pretty small, in my opinion. I would actually like a bigger laptop. I don't know if I've said that enough times on camera, but I would like an 18-inch MacBook Pro if they made one. I would have bought that one. Anyone can claim they see the difference. Well, I want to see like a side-by-side, like a blind test. Could someone actually identify this one is 1080p premium and this one isn't? And it's like, okay, it's one thing. Even if they could tell the difference, do they care enough? Like, I don't know why YouTube's supporting that personally. I think that's a waste of time. Sam K says, watching some content, especially video games, the higher bitrate really makes a difference for particle effects and other things, but 6K versus 13K is an edge case. Yeah, I guess for some content, maybe I could understand YouTube being too compressive, but I don't know. I feel like that's still the kind of thing you have in the background anyway. Are you really zooming in on the fire embers, the particle effects? Like, I think a lot of the tech community is too obsessed with pixel peeping. It's just like, let me do it. Yeah, I can see the difference. It's like, yeah, but when you're watching the video, you're not doing that. You're just watching it for what it is. You know, like, I don't think people are testing themselves. Well, it's technically better. That means we have to have it on like that all the time. It's like, no. There's all kinds of YouTubers I watch that don't upload in 4K. I don't care. They make great stuff because they bring up good points, and I appreciate their commentary. There's a channel I watch called, one of my favorite channels, to be honest, and he doesn't even use a camera. It's called Aptera Owners Club. And most of his videos are just screen recordings of his browser and him talking. He just gives feedback on an idea. He got an idea that he wants to talk about something. It doesn't have to be about Aptera. It could be just about the environment or electric vehicles or government. I just saw 7 hours ago he uploaded a video about Texas applying more fees to electric vehicles and stuff. And I'm going to watch that probably after this. And he doesn't show his face. He has shown his face. It's not some like hidden thing. It's not like, oh, what does he look like? No, he shows it sometimes. He just doesn't see the need to put it there in every video. And I kind of admire that. I'm like, you know what? No, I don't think everyone wants to look at me when I'm talking. Like, maybe I should just capture my desktop display. And he just records off of his laptop microphone. And I don't even know if his videos are 1080p. They might be, but they might as well be 720 because they're just a laptop screen. Doesn't need to be super high res. But he just brings up excellent points, and all his videos are super well researched, and he's done a lot of due diligence whenever he dives into a subject, and you can tell he's really thought about this and looked into it. And he just kind of keeps it short. He keeps it simple. And it's the most basic, like, super cheap production you could imagine. It's just a guy talking with his laptop screen recording. And it's great. It's the opposite of Marquez, doing 8K giant sweeping shots of phones. It's how high production can we get? And I just realized that wasn't the kind of YouTube channel. I still watch Marquez, though, by the way. The reason Marquez is my favorite tech YouTuber still to this day is because he has the insanely good production quality and value, but he's also got just a natural gift at summarizing topics and simplifying them, which I cannot do. So I appreciate his way of just summarizing and simplifying and understanding complex concepts. He's really good at it. So he's got great takes. He's got great perspectives and opinions. Even though I don't agree with them all, he's just really good at articulating it. And he's got the high budget stuff. So I'm like, yeah, of course he's the biggest tech YouTuber. He's got both. He's got the best of both. But most of the time, I'm not that interested in a channel just because they have really good production value. I'm interested in a channel because they have thought about what they're saying, or they provide a unique perspective. And these days I tend to like smaller channels too because they feel more genuine. They don't have some algorithm they're trying to cater to. They're not trying to be all calculated with how the video is timed and trying to maximize audience retention. And it's not heavily calculated. It doesn't feel corporate. It just feels like a guy that I know and I'm just catching up with a friend. That's the kind of YouTube interaction I prefer. So most of the channels I watch are not that big. Relatively, like most of the channels I watch, I would say are not over 1 million subs. So that's just me, but other people are. Yeah, the higher resolution is definitely overkill. That's for sure. I find a smaller screen form factor makes more of a difference than having a thinner laptop that has a big screen. That's a good point, Marngel. If the 16-inch MacBook Pro is too bulky for you, it's fairly likely that the 15-inch MacBook Air would also still be kind of big and bulky. Like, it's not the thickness that's intruding too much. At least that was my impression as well when I got the M2 MacBook Air. I was not shocked by the weight. It was like, yeah, no, there's still some heft to it. It's thinner, but not by a ton. Like dimension wise, it's just a little smaller. But yeah, if you really wanted a smaller MacBook, you should go with I would say go with a 14-inch MacBook Pro then before I'd go with a 15-inch MacBook Air. I love how the 15-inch MacBook Air hasn't even come out yet, and we're already telling people what they should be buying instead. 14-inch MacBook Pro sounds like the sweet spot, I think, for a lot of people. I watch YouTube most of the time, but sometimes I watch anime and play Minecraft. Okay, that's fair. It feels more genuine when it's not overly produced. Yes, thank you, Levi. I agree with that. Burkhart agrees with me. 14-inch MacBook Pro is going to be much better than a 15-inch Air. You're probably right, because for one, 14-inch MacBook Pro is going to have an actual cooling system. I don't know what the 15-inch Air is going to have. It's probably fanless, though. It'll have a much better display. Mini LED, ProMotion. I don't think either of that's coming to the MacBook Air. And probably thinner bezels, if you care about that kind of thing. If you don't, then buy a M1 MacBook Air, you know. Probably better speakers. And now you can get a refurbished 14-inch MacBook Pro for like $1,500, or Burkhart's getting one for like $1,000 or something. I forget. He got a 14-inch MacBook Pro for real cheap. Because they've been around for a while, which is great. So it hasn't even launched yet, and I'm already like, yeah, you probably shouldn't buy it. 15 inches versus 14 inches, is it that big? Help, you know? This seems like one of those decoy effect models, you know? Better screen, better performance, more RAM, storage, better speakers, cooling. 1400, but it was 1 terabyte in unbinned. Yeah, that's an amazing deal. Oh my God. Terabyte of storage. Yeah, you know the M2 15-inch Air is not going to have a terabyte on it. Heck no. It's probably going to ship with 256 gigs. Riley says, it's not just weight, though. You can physically fit the 14-inch MacBook Pro in more bags than the 16-inch and presumably the 15-inch MacBook Air. Yeah, honestly, I have still yet to find a bag I can't fit my 16-inch MacBook in. I have several backpacks, and it fits in all of them. Sounds like you bought the wrong backpack. Margel got the 14-inch MacBook Pro for $900. But granted, you got it from an acquaintance. Well, that's a friend gave me this MacBook, so it was a great price. It was $0. Zero Link says, to me, that inch makes a lot of difference, though. Is that inch going to make a lot of difference? But the better display with mini LED and XDR settings and ProMotion and the more ports and the better speakers and the better thermal system, are none of those going to make a big difference? Just the 1 inch? I don't know. I bought a 16-inch MacBook Pro recently, waiting for it to arrive. Ooh, that's an exciting time, Zorlink. I remember when I was waiting for mine to arrive, I was so excited. I'm saving for a MacBook Pro of the new M2 Air. Wait. M2 Air, but we'll most likely buy the 2024. I'm trying to understand what you're saying, Drew. Are you saying saving for a MacBook Pro of the new M2 Air? Do you mean the M3 Touch Bar MacBook Pro? Is that what you're saying? I wouldn't even recommend it to regular people because the 16-inch MacBook Pro, same specs, will probably be cheaper and be noticeably better even to normal people. Yeah, probably. I'll take that subjectively, says AJ. I had to wait nearly a month for mine to arrive. Jeez, that's a long time. My goodness. Oh, let me make sure I addressed all these questions before we wrap up. Yeah, I think the short answer to YJ's question is that no, I think YouTubers will continue being deceptive and being clickbaity because it works and it will likely continue to work. If it's worked this long, I don't see it stopping. So if anything, I see it getting worse. The clickbait will get even more deceptive or more immoral, and they'll put inappropriate things in the thumbnail to get more clicks. And it will sadly probably work, but that's okay. We just won't be like those people, you know? Nate Tech says this may be more of a EV channel thing, but what do you think the likelihood of Tesla giving option of CarPlay since they added Apple Music? I just leased a Tesla for the first time and take delivery tomorrow, which is right now, I think, for him. Yeah, the May 29th. He's got it now. Considering getting an adapter to use CarPlay via Bluetooth, what are your thoughts on CarPlay being added via software update? So Tesla has been pretty clear that they have no interest in adding it. What's funny though is most Tesla employees do use iPhones, and the iPhone app for Teslas is amazing. They prioritize that app too. They will bring features to the iOS app before the Android app. So Tesla's definitely a big Apple fan, but they have this fundamental issue with CarPlay because it occupies a lot of space on the display, and there's certain things, because Teslas rely so heavily on their display, there's certain things that they just cannot give up. So they can't let CarPlay take over the entire screen. Even the enhanced CarPlay, even that one that they showcased last year that shows the speedometer and the fuel and everything, even that, still, Tesla's going to want to show the full self-driving visualization. They're going to want to show the pop-ups for the battery preconditioning and stuff. So trying to have this kind of competing UI where you have Tesla trying to do all this stuff and then Apple trying to do all this stuff on top of it, I can understand why it's probably not a good fit for them. I think CarPlay is a good solution for when the auto manufacturer doesn't have much time or emphasis on their own software. There's other EVs out there like Ford, who's going to be switching to Tesla's connector. So Ford vehicles are going to access superchargers, by the way. That's big news. Ford is still doubling down on CarPlay. So GM has announced they're going to stop including CarPlay to develop their own in-house software, which seems like a bold strategy. We'll see where it ends up with them. But there's other automakers like Ford, as well as Aptera, who's my favorite startup. They want to accommodate for CarPlay because they don't have the resources or the time to designate to a more feature-complete UI, UX optimized software for the vehicle, whereas Tesla has a huge software team that is able to rapidly send out updates and change things and rearrange things. And with the full self-driving visualizations coupled with the supercharging data that they put up there, Tesla just wants to have more control over that display the same way Apple wants to have control over their display. So I actually think Tesla not supporting CarPlay makes them more like Apple, because Apple likes being the one in control of the screen. That's why they want to manually review every app that gets put on the iPhone so that they know it's not doing anything that it's not supposed to. So I think that's the right call for Tesla, but for other automakers that don't want to have to design their whole operating system and make it super clean and easy to understand, it's actually, there's pros and cons to CarPlay. And I don't think having it necessarily makes it a better vehicle than a Tesla, but I also don't think having it is a bad thing. I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And because of Tesla's hardware, I think it makes more sense for them to just be in control of the OS. But for a vehicle like Ford that's going to have a lot more traditional buttons on the interior, CarPlay makes sense because they don't have the software expertise that Apple's going to have or that Tesla's going to have. And Aptera is a startup with, limited funding, so they can't blow a bunch of money on software development right now. So relying on your phone to do the heavy lifting for media and infotainment and navigation, that makes financial sense for the company. It's more efficient capital-wise. So I think for certain companies it makes sense. I don't know what GM's thinking is. I think if you have CarPlay, you should keep it. It's a really bizarre decision to me to have it and then decide later you're going to remove it. Tesla's never had it in the first place, so I don't think it's a big thing. But yeah, there's aftermarket ways you can add CarPlay. I've tried CarPlay before. I wasn't that impressed with it. It's definitely better than most in-car software because most in-car software looks 10 years old and very dated and it's very laggy. So with cars with kind of poor software optimization, yeah, I want to have CarPlay. But if I have a car with great software optimization like a Tesla, or I've also checked out a Rivian, they have great software teams. They don't need the CarPlay experience. I understand why they don't want to have it. So I doubt they're going to add it at all at this point, unless Apple fundamentally changes the way CarPlay works, but even then, I think it'd just be some more work on Tesla's part, and I don't think them adding Apple Music has anything to do with it. I think they just are trying to make it easier to incorporate Apple features and Apple services within Tesla's own OS is likely what they're trying to do. I don't think they're gonna go back on the CarPlay thing. Drew super chatted. Sorry, I just woke up. I'm just going to get the MacBook Pro M3 or M4 model. Oh, okay, gotcha. M3 or M4. Well, you didn't need to super chat to correct yourself, but thank you. Adding CarPlay would be a really big challenge to integrate. Yeah, with their hardware, I think it would be challenging. With other companies that just have a display, but then they have buttons for everything else, I think it's a lot easier. GM has always been the one American company I respect the least for many reasons. Ditching CarPlay is another reason why. I can understand if you never had CarPlay, choosing to continue to not have it. But yeah, GM's the one company that had it and is saying, we're going to remove it. I was like, huh? What? I think if you already got it, I don't think you should spend resources on removing it. That doesn't make sense. I would not trust an automotive startup as cars need a huge base with longevity. Well, don't pour your life savings into it, but all great companies start as startups. There's not a company that's just boom, here we are. And I think that they all begin with ideas and plans, and they're constantly looking for investors before they can start production or start to have real customers. And Aptera, in my opinion, is just the coolest, most exciting startup with great ideas and a great plan. And they are slowly in the process of executing that plan. No, they have not delivered a product yet, but I don't think everything before that stage is useless. I don't think it's not worth looking into what steps are they taking or how are they executing on their plan. That's very valuable, I've discovered. And I've watched many startups go from, well, maybe not many, but I've watched a few EV startups go from we have no vehicles on the road to now I see their vehicles all the time. And it's exciting to watch that transition process, to see them go from here's our idea, here's what we want to make, to okay, now we can make it, now we're delivering it, and now you see them driving around. That's kind of cool. What will CarPlay 17 have? That's honestly, I know you probably won't agree with me, but I'm genuinely, but it may be because I'm such an Aptera fan. I like that startup idea so much of okay, we've got all these electric cars and we can fit solar cells on this vehicle. And if you get the efficiency high enough, you can actually start to drive around the car for free, and it's charging itself, whether you're at home or at work. As long as there's sunshine, it can power itself. I'm like, that's such a cool concept of literally free driving around with a low entry price. And I fell in love with the design. I think it's just a really cool futuristic look. And because of that, and they said they want to incorporate CarPlay and Android Auto, I'm more excited at DubDub for CarPlay features than anything. If there was a poll and we all asked ourselves, what are we most excited for at DubDub next week? My vote would be CarPlay demos. It's probably not going to be Aptera, I understand that, but the likelihood of them showcasing the enhanced CarPlay experience on a real vehicle rather than just a template like they did last year, that gets me excited, because I think that Apple is the best software company in the world. And vehicles are going to have to adapt not just to electric and ditching the gas engine, but also to being more software oriented and seeing what kind of role Apple plays in that equation. I'm very fascinated by, because clearly they kind of missed the train on actually owning their own car. And they can't, I don't think they're going to actually manufacture and make their own car or unveil their own car design. I think at this point it's too late, and they're just going to keep partnering with other car brands and seeing how well that software integrates with other car brands, which will be kind of fascinating to me. Are you living inside of the cave? Wait, what? Oh, people are asking. Kale season. They made a Final Cut Pro for the iPad? What? Since when? Alpha says, I saw my first R1S and Lucid last week. I still remember waiting for those vehicles to be produced. Yeah, I remember years ago where they were just in the same stage Aptera's in right now. They were gearing up for production. Um, all car companies begin as startups, unless if it's GM, which began as a big amalgamation of different car brands that were bought out by one businessman, basically the Facebook Meta of car companies. Well, I don't really consider that when they began. I think that was a branding transition, but there were still a company before they were called GM. All those other ones were eventually startups too. Has the new CarPlay version come out yet from last year? No, but also they didn't claim it would. If you go to Apple's website where they talk about it, they say it was kind of weird. I remember talking about this on the podcast. We mentioned, like, why are they announcing this CarPlay stuff? Because it said vehicles with enhanced CarPlay or whatever it's called with the new CarPlay experience will be available late 2023. Here it is. This is unchanged. This has been here for basically a year. Next generation CarPlay is what the official term is. I prefer the enhanced because it's less syllables. But yeah, this is still in the iOS 16 page, and it just says vehicle announcements coming in late 2023. So why did they unveil this mid 2022? Like, that's very early. But I'm hopeful that they'll actually have some kind of car at Dub Dub next week where they can showcase it really genuinely working. That would be exciting for me because I'm more invested in that. All the phone stuff is just kind of cherry on top material. I'm like, cool, okay. Let's see. Other great car companies usually were started by engineers who came from other companies and started with mass production. Well, I mean, the brand may have started then, but I don't consider the company starting then. I've had bad experiences with GM too. We had a GM vehicle growing up, and we don't have that vehicle anymore because of how often it broke down. Maybe they thought a car would be announced before Dub 23. Well, there were a bunch of automakers that came forward and said, yes, we're going to support next generation CarPlay. I think that included Polestar and Ford. But I just want to see like a real world demo of like, here's a real product that will actually support this. You know, that would be cool. Silver Builder says, with technology, at what point do you think diminishing returns on any given technology makes additional development irrelevant? Well, it's a very vague question, so it's hard to get specific at what point. I would say when the average human stops noticing the difference between the two technologies, which we've already hit in many ways. Like, we hit that with screen resolution, in my opinion. You know, it was a long time ago. I'd say it was like 8 or 10 years ago that Sony started coming out with phones that had 4K displays, but still, that's not really a standard thing these days. So it didn't increase linearly. It actually started going down. The best-selling phone, I think, when the 7 Plus came out, that was when the Plus iPhone started outselling the smaller iPhone. So if we had 1080p phones becoming the best sellers with a 401 pixel per inch density, but then later on, iPhone 10 comes around, and then 10s and 10R was there, and 11. Now the 10R and the 11 were the best sellers, and they had lower pixel densities than the 7 Plus did. They had, I think it was like a 828p resolution. It was not 1080, and they had, I think, 326 ppi. So to me, that was kind of the market has spoken moment in which we hit a wall with resolution where people stopped noticing. And you also will remember back then, Galaxy phones were increasing towards 1080p and then 1440p. But then after iPhone 10, 11, 12 series, that's when Galaxy phones started shipping more with 1080p displays rather than 1440. And there was actually I can't remember which one it was, but it was like the Galaxy S20 or S21 had a lower pixel density than the Galaxy S 7 or 8 or something. It was like they had also hit a wall where it's like, okay, now the higher resolution is just hurting us. It's costing the GPU more pressure, and it's eating into our battery life more. So let's just go back to 1080p instead of 1440 because people can't tell the difference, and we can increase the battery life and save on cost. Not that we're going to pass that on to the consumer, but we'll have better margins, right? So that's the best way I could describe it, is that it's when everyday people stop noticing the difference, which in many ways in the smartphone world we've already hit that. I think with cameras, with batteries, and build quality, whatever, people can't tell anymore. I don't know how I remember the pixels, Prince. It's just a very specific number. It's not 400, it's 401. We just needed that one extra pixel to get it to 1080p. I don't know why that stood out to me. I remember 326 because that's when Apple unveiled the Retina display on the iPhone 4 with Steve Jobs and everything. He was like, 326 pixels, that's high enough that your eye cannot detect the difference at an average distance. So that stood out to me too. The latest Android version has a simple mode similar to dumbed down kids modes, but the icons look exactly like iOS. Dumb mode is iOS mode. That makes sense. I've had bad experiences with all gas cars. Me too. They all ran on gas. That was the biggest problem. Let's see. Apple is the best software company in the world. iPadOS is excluded. Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't tried out an Android tablet in a while. It's entirely possible that Android tablets are still worse than iPads somehow. It's kind of funny how Apple is now the brand with the higher pixel density compared to other brands, how the tablet tables have turned in the past 5 years. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not up to snuff on all the latest pixel densities of phones, but I know they're all, for the most part. I know iPhone's Super Retina XDR surpassed 400 ppi, which is, again, it has more to do with the OLED panel pixel arrangement than it does the actual pixel density. Like, OLEDs have to have, I forget what it's called. Correct me in the chat because I know I'm wrong, but don't OLEDs have to have like a pentile arrangement of pixels where you do one pixel here, one pixel here? They kind of form like a diamond type arrangement, whereas LCDs are just in a line. I guess if you're watching in the EV channel and the tech channel, a funny way of putting it would be OLED panels are like cylindrical cells, LCD panels are like prismatic cells. That's the nerdiest thing I think I've said in a year. That's the weirdest. If you're into electric vehicles, here's how pixels work on a display. But essentially, when you arrange the pixels in a more diamond pattern, it just means that you can't keep the resolution the same. If you keep the resolution the same, there will be more noticeable gaps. So you have to increase the resolution for it to look sharp. And then it tends to look really sharp because the density is higher, but the arrangement is also different. So my point being, pixel density after 326 is kind of negligible. Like, it doesn't really matter anymore. They all just start to blur together. Devasta says, it's amazing how Apple manages to make CarPlay run smoothly because cars have their own processors and almost all of their UI sucks. Yeah, but that's the thing. I've tried CarPlay on a few cars, and a lot of the time it's not that smooth. Randy talked about this as well on the podcast. It can be laggy and it can disconnect. And there was a video recently that was showcasing how if you open the camera app on your iPhone, it makes CarPlay look really, really laggy. And sometimes when you're driving in the car, you want to take a picture or take a video of something, but you're also using the CarPlay, of course, because that's your maps and everything. So it's kind of helpful to be able to have your own native operating system that doesn't rely on the phone. Legalized Comedy says, I just noticed I was using 1080p on my 6 Pro and not 1440. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing with all subjects. I think 5G is that way. Like, after, I forget what it is, but there's something like after 100 megabits per second, it becomes really, really hard to notice faster internet. Like, for a lot of smartphone users, the difference between 100 megabits download and a gigabit download is rarely ever spotted. Like, you wouldn't be able to know unless you started downloading like a massive file, but we usually don't do that on our phones. Most of the time we're watching videos, checking email, browsing social media. Once you get past a certain point, it doesn't make a huge difference, which is why I was always speaking out against 5G. It was like, I think this is kind of a waste because most people aren't going to tell the difference, but they will notice their battery life takes a bigger hit. and their phone overheats much faster. Let's see. CarPlay actually runs off the iPhone processor. I think the lag everyone experiences is caused by the cable. Well, no, it's a lot of CarPlay is done wirelessly these days. But the part of it is, yes, powered by the iPhone, but the interaction part, when you're touching the display and swiping and navigating menus, that is a communication going on between the car's display and the iPhone's processor, and there is often a little lag there. I literally just put my phone in landscape behind the steering wheel for navigation. CarPlay without CarPlay. I guess you could do that. I just never found the need, I guess, ever since I got a modern vehicle that has navigation built into it. I'd rather just use that. It's kind of funny how Apple is now the brand with the higher... Sorry, I read that. I can see the pixels on my 13 Pro, Series 7, and MacBook Pro 14-inch. I think you're bumping up against some physics there. I think... I mean, yes, you could see the display. That's the point. But, like, the individual pixels... At the average viewing distance is what retina means. Retina doesn't mean they're microscopic. It just means that the way you use the phone, naturally, you wouldn't be able to detect individual pixels. That might be placebo. You're convincing yourself you can see them. 50 megabits download is perfectly fine for my media consumption. However, upload speeds for my Wi-Fi sucks. Yeah, upload people usually don't do too much of, but if you're a content creator posting videos or uploading data, it becomes very noticeable. Like for me, the difference between 100 megabits upload and a gigabit upload would be massive because of how much I upload all the time. Lancaster Film says, I haven't tried Final Cut for iPad. Is it better than LumaFusion? It's got some advantages, but I don't know. I wouldn't really recommend either. Like, I don't think it's worth $50 a year if you're planning on using it for any kind of extended video editing experience. Like, it's so different from the Mac version. If you're interested in Final Cut, please get a Mac. Don't subscribe to it on your M1 iPad, or buy an M1 iPad just so that you can get that subscription. No, God. I just hate that scenario in my head already. The concept of, I don't have the right iPad. Let me get the M1 iPad so that I can also get the $50 a year subscription. No, please, don't do that. In situations like 1080p versus 4K, 60 versus 120, 5G versus 4G, making the numbers bigger isn't really an improvement. It just makes it harder to go back once you're used to more. Yeah, and what I would argue that you were kind of getting at, Sparky, is that it has more to do with marketing. 5G was a giant marketing ploy to convince people that they needed a new phone, because 99.9% of the time that 4G was slow for people, it was not because the 4G capacity, the wavelength of 4G antennas was too weak. Most of the time, if your phone was slow, it was because you were out of range of a tower. You were in the wrong place. Coverage was the issue, not the wavelength. But they knew that by pushing up some new number, 5G, we're bringing 5G, by pushing that new spec, for one, you get a lot of people in the door, because it's like the perfect tech spec. You can say, this makes your internet faster. In reality, most people who are getting slow speeds is because they're far away from a tower. But you say, this will speed it up. People don't know that. They're just like, oh, okay, faster. And your phone doesn't have 5G. So you need to come into our store and pick up a new phone that'll have 5G. Oh, okay, I'll get a faster phone that way. It was just a perfect way to market to everyone. Your phone is inferior. Your service will be better if you just buy this or that. It was just too perfect. Because obviously, just by improving coverage, improving the number of cell towers there are, that wouldn't be something you can charge people for. You can't upsell people on coverage. You can't convince them to come back to the store and buy a new phone because the coverage is better. No, you would just have to keep using the same phone you got and just, hey, my coverage is better, cool. And your bill would probably not change. So the carriers were like, okay, well, we can't do that. So let's come up with some new thing to market for everybody. And most of the marketing for 5G was boasting about gigabit download speeds. I remember that very, very clearly, and that was not at all what it ended up being. In many cases, it ended up being slower than 4G, and it definitely chews through our battery life faster. So I still think is a big scam. And it's just one of those things I tell people, like, don't fall for it. But there was also a bunch of people saying 5G causes cancer, which I thought was funny because it's like, well, it is a scam, but don't. That's not true either. Biggest proof people don't care about screen quality is the amount of matte displays. These are terrible. 99% of monitors have that, and a big amount of laptops too. Why are they terrible? I don't understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I've used matte displays, and I don't really care. It doesn't make a huge difference to me. I live in Taiwan. 5G here is gigabit internet. Well, it's a much smaller place. It's a lot. You can cover Taiwan probably with like 50 cell towers. try to cover the United States with 5G ultra wideband cell towers. It would be a nightmare. Do you think that this new CarPlay dealing with so many car functions will be smooth? It will not be nice to have problems with the speedometer, for example. Yeah, I think the key to developing the next generation CarPlay thing is that it has to. Yeah, the car is going to have. I don't think the data conversion is going to go from send the speedometer data to the phone and then the phone casts it to the screen. There has to be some new way where it can take the next gen CarPlay UI that's already installed in the car and then showcase the speed directly to that. I'm sure they're working with the, NHTSA is going to have all kinds of rules and laws for that. They make the colors look faded and weird. They make the displays look a lot worse. I've looked at matte displays before. I didn't think they looked worse, but I guess I'm part of the average consumer. That seems kind of niche to me. The colors look wrong. It's like, that's blue, that's green. I get it. Yeah, prediction is that Apple will require some level of processing power and wireless latency. Well, my prediction was that the cars that support it would have that UI element natively baked into it to a certain extent. And the phone has your preferences and your settings, and it tells the car what to showcase, but I still think that the car would have some pre-installed stuff. Burkhart says, I'm thinking Apple will make some sort of computer for the automakers to install. I love that idea. I like the idea of a car that could say, just like how we had old laptops that said Intel inside, we could have cars that say Apple Silicon inside, powered by Apple Silicon infotainment. I think that would be really cool. There's this little chip that automakers can buy, and it powers the whole system. And it links with your phone, of course, because your phone has your texts and your navigation and your calendar and all that. So it still would, it's not like it would be completely independent of your phone, but that would be a good question. If the CarPlay takes over the whole screen, what happens if you leave your phone behind? Does the car have to have a different operating system to fall back on or something? I don't know. This car has an M1 chip. M1 Pro is inside the F-150 Lightning. 4G started on iPhone 5 and 5G started on iPhone 12, which is 8 years. This means we can look forward to being whelmed by 6G. Oh, guys, I don't know what you saw, but my point about 5G being a marketing thing was totally proven when Xfinity started sending us in the mail. They started boasting about 10G. Comcast is boasting 10G technology is here. So now it's just high number next to G, and that's it. That's all that matters. So I have no idea what they're referring to, but I hate Comcast with a passion, and I just laughed so hard when I checked the mail one day, and it was just like, introducing 10G. This is a real thing, by the way. I'm not making this up. Let me try to find it. It was hilarious. Xfinity 10G. Here it is. The 10G network. The future starts now. It is their network. Yeah, I don't. That's just the search results. Let's see. It's probably going to ask for my location, so let me be careful and not dox myself. Let me try to figure out what is 10G. Excuse me. It doesn't say. Oh, here we go. Frequently asked questions. Perfect. What is the Xfinity 10G network? The new brand of our next generation network. The 10G network delivers a powerful connection to our customers that will continue to get smarter. So it's nothing. It means that. How can I get on the network? All our internet plans are powered on Xfinity 10G. Oh, so if you have Xfinity, you already have 10G. Well, that's easy. But yeah, it was the perfect little marketing gimmick. If it means 10 gigabit, then why does the website say 200 megabit internet with Wi-Fi equipment on the 10G network? Like, look, this is the speeds they're promising with 10G. Wow! Look at that shine! Look at this little white box you can put in your house. 10G will literally kill at the network. I mean the G-forces. Oh, that's a good point, yeah. There's some people that have survived 10G, but 6G is supposed to be phones sharing internet with each other. So, hotspots? What? But, yeah, for the most part, I still like Mint Mobile. I'm worried that T-Mobile's going to screw it up somehow. But, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's very stupid. It's just... And the fact that I got 10G ads in the mail, like on paper. They sent me an envelope that said 10G is here. Okay. Just bouncing signals to each other from the tower. I feel like 6G should incorporate Starlink tech. I feel like we should start incorporating, like, you get, when you're indoors, your phone pulls signal from a cell tower, but when you're outdoors, it pulls signal from space. I feel like that would be, if the technology, right now the speeds from space are very slow, but just bouncing signals. For iOS 17, I would like to see stability and some more new features. Well, okay, you will get one of those things, Drew, or none of those things, possibly. The problem with 4G isn't the speed, it's the coverage. Yeah, I agree. I would much rather have 50 megabits download everywhere than I would gigabit in like 2 places, you know. F-150 Lightning, powered by M1 in 10G. It is concerning to me because we own our cars for so long, typically. The average car ownership length for Americans is 8 years, which means there's half of Americans that keep their car for like 10 plus years. It's concerning to me that as far as I can tell, you know, Tesla tends to have the latest hardware, highest tech, at least for the computer and infotainment, than anybody. And I don't think any car on the road has 5G modems in it yet, which in the future, 10, 20 years from now, I could see carriers starting to discontinue support for 4G. They've already done it for 3G. So even if you have an older phone, this doesn't support 3G, but even if you had an older phone with 3G connectivity, it won't work anymore. Not because of the software support, but also because the carriers, the towers that it relied on are no longer active. So if we have a bunch of cars, and our cars for navigation and GPS and other things, like the important thing for Teslas, and I think this will become an increasingly more important thing for all electric vehicles, but on Tesla displays, it tells you if a supercharger is online and how many cars are charging there. So if a supercharger gets full, the car will not route you to that supercharger. It'll say, uh-oh, that charger's full, and it'll route you to a different one on a road trip. It's doing all that through cell data. So because my car doesn't have 5G in it, if I'm still driving it in 10, 15, or 20 years, and the carriers start discontinuing 4G because we've moved on to 6G or 7G now, and 5G is old news, then my car won't have the hardware equipped to connect to those towers. So I'm kind of surprised none of the vehicles, at least that I'm aware of on the road, have 5G connectivity yet. I would have thought. I'm not saying cars should have 5G so that we can have gigabit in our cars. I'm just saying some base form of cellular connectivity is going to be very useful, even for basic things like knowing how many stalls are available. So if my car in the future isn't able to tell me that, that would be kind of frustrating, and I guess you would just have to start ignoring the display and just relying on all navigation off your phone, and then having to check the charging app in your phone. Is that charger available? How many cars are charging there and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would much rather. That's why I was also a big fan of Starlink, is because Starlink was not trying to achieve record-breaking internet speed, which I think we have in many ways for most consumers. There's some exceptions, but for most consumers, I think we've hit a wall in terms of noticeable speed improvement. Once you get past 100 megabits download, most everyday people who are watching TV are not going to notice that stuff. They're just going to keep streaming whatever. Maybe if you're a gamer or a live streamer, you'll care more about gigabit and higher. But Starlink was not focused on record-breaking speed, but it was focused on infinite coverage, basically. Starlink was like, anywhere on planet Earth that has line of sight of the sky could have access to 200, 300 megabits download. And I was like, that's a big deal. That's really cool because we don't have that technology now. So that's why I did that whole video. Starlink is a way bigger deal than 5G. And yet no one was talking about Starlink, but everyone was talking about 5G. Alpha says, didn't Tesla offer retrofits for cellular modems? I believe at a price, yeah, but it wasn't necessarily cheap. I think it was like $2,500. So if you get a car with 5G today, you delay that inevitable retrofit, basically. Let's see. Imagine a Tesla with Apple Silicon to power the OS. Imagine running Final Cut Pro. Oh, Final Cut in the car. The next big thing. Yeah, I saw EA's massive bug. EA is sucky. Where does an Apple Smart Display like Google's land in your most wanted Apple products? Between car, foldable camera, headset, glasses? I guess it's pretty up there because it sounds really easy. Apple's already manufacturing practically everything they need. They already make iPads with magnets on the back. Those iPads already have smart connectors on the back with pins. Honestly, you could probably just make a HomePod style speaker that already works with existing iPads, just assuming they have the smart connector on the back. So it could work with iPad Airs. iPad 10 ruins everything because they put the smart connector in the wrong place. Don't get me started on that. But yeah, I guess it's not necessarily that I want to buy it really badly. It would take so little effort on Apple's part to make a smart display that's an iPad that you can remove from the smart speaker. Just make a HomePod that is also an iPad dock, I guess is what I'm saying. And then, I know this is a lot to ask, but maybe have the iPad OS team optimize the iPad to have like a smart display mode so that it can control the house. No, that's way too much. Sorry, I forgot. We can't ask iPad OS to do all that. But yeah, where would I put it on my ranking? Yeah, I guess at this point, I don't even want an Apple car anymore. Like, I don't want Apple themselves to design a car. I just want them to either buy Lucid or buy Aptera or buy Canoe. Aptera would be my first choice, but like buy another EV company and then just pump it full of your software stuff. I think there's so many car designs already. We don't need another sedan or another SUV. Oh, here's another expensive luxury car. Like, we've got so many of those already. Just partner with an existing one and take it seriously. Like, if Apple did some kind of serious partnership, like, frankly, I think if Apple made a car, it would probably end up looking just like a Mercedes EQS. Like, it would just be a very luxurious sedan with really nice materials, and it's very expensive. But then Apple would just take over the display and probably have a way better software experience than what Mercedes has come up with. I think Mercedes has CarPlay. So I would rather, they can't buy out all of Mercedes per se, but just form like a more official partnership with an existing automaker and just flood it with your software and maybe even put Apple Silicon on the inside to power it. It would be really cool if there was an infotainment display that was just full on iPad OS. I mean, iPad OS is disappointing for a $1,000 product, but for a car display that's just meant for entertainment, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to have access to the entire iPad App Store, so you could literally put Final Cut in your car if you felt like it. But you could have all your third-party apps and your games already queued up in there, and it'd be a high refresh rate display and everything. So that's high on my list of like things I want to see Apple do, and then beneath that would be like a camera. I'd love to see an Apple DSLR, and then beneath camera, I would put the smart display or the iPad HomePod docking thing, just Apple's version of the Pixel stand. And then beneath that, I would put foldable iPhone. Not that I would be interested in a foldable iPhone, but it would be fun to see. I don't think it would. I don't think foldables will replace all smartphones, but I do think that they're at least a little bit more digestible or relatable than a headset. Like there's a lot of people that buy iPhones, and there's probably a decent chunk of that huge demographic that would buy a foldable iPhone. But the number of people that will buy a $3,000 AR headset, I just don't think is very high. I think it'll be very niche. So I put foldable iPhone, augmented reality headset at the bottom, and then memberships beneath that, I guess. Apple coming up with more services. Apple camera would be pretty high on that list, yeah. Stop trying to overwork the one pot guy in the basement of Apple Park. He's trying his best at updating. There is one man running all of iPadOS, and he's really stressed out, yeah. It's funny how companies always sell 5G. You can download a whole movie in seconds. I just don't know why I need it if I have coverage to stream it. Yeah, like, perfect example. I remember people saying that, well, 5G is nice because you can really quickly download an entire movie right before you get on the plane, which, in my opinion, I was like, I mean, most of the time we know when we're about to take a flight, and so we can just download it from home and on Wi-Fi or whatever. But okay, let's say you forget and you just download it right before plane takes off. Well, guess what happened? Airlines are now incorporating Starlink because obviously they're way up in the air. They've got a perfectly clear view of the sky, which is where all the satellites are. And now there are Starlink satellites providing really decent internet speed on a plane. So now there's more and more planes now that are supporting this with in-flight Wi-Fi that can go over 60 megabits. So now, rather than killing your battery and trying to download, a huge movie file to your phone seconds before takeoff using ultra-wideband, you can actually, even with older tech that doesn't have 5G, you can connect to the in-flight Wi-Fi and just stream your HD 4K movies, and you've actually got the internet to sustain it now because of Starlink. So even more reason as to why Starlink was a bigger deal and more helpful than 5G was. And by the way, I'll be testing out some new Starlink hardware in a different part of the world in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget about home appliances. Oh yeah, home appliances would be near the bottom. That's for sure. Don't airports have Wi-Fi at the terminals anyway? Yeah, but they might not be that fast. But even so, I'm just saying, with a Starlink future, airplane Wi-Fi isn't going to be that slow anymore. You're going to have decent internet on planes. You already have that in some airlines, but in the future, that Starlink is just objectively cheaper and faster than any other satellite internet, so it's not going to make any sense. There's going to be no reason for airlines to stick with existing satellite internet unless they're just stuck in a contract with them. But airplanes have to do a lot of communication with the ground and the tower and everything anyway, so it's very likely that give it another 5-10 years and basically all planes will have Starlink connectivity because nothing else is going to be faster or as cheap. This is why I've done a video in the past on why I think Starlink could potentially become a monopoly, because there's just really zero way to compete with it. I can't visualize any threat to Starlink, at least for things like air travel and boats. A cruise ship has got to use satellite internet too. They can't have a little 1,000-mile long Ethernet cable going out to the ship. Foldables are publicity stunts. Everyone that makes them is just saying, look at us, we make cool tech. Yeah, exactly. I'm not denying that. I just think it would be cool if Apple did that. Apple does publicity stunts all the time. I think this mixed reality headset is absolutely a publicity stunt. I don't think it's going to be something everybody buys or everybody uses. I would argue I think more people would buy a foldable iPhone than a mixed reality headset. Like, it's, again, folding phones aren't something I want in particular, but I think it would be more versatile. I could see it working in people's lives. Like, there are people who spend a lot of money on their phone every year anyway. Those same people, if they knew that they could fit a slightly bigger screen in their pocket that folds up and then it's still an iPhone on the outside, like, I could see people replacing their iPhone with a folding iPhone. I could visualize that. The number of people I see spending $3,000 on a headset is pretty dang niche. Hopefully all the leaks and rumors are wrong about that, and it ends up costing $1,500 or something. But still, even if it was $1,500, I can't really think of anyone in my personal life that would genuinely buy it and use it other than myself. Whereas, like, yeah, I could think of a handful of people in my life that might buy a foldable iPhone if it was available. They are publicity stunts, but who's got... It's not publicity per se. It's tech. It's a tech stunt. It's like, going to those shows, the guys that do jumps on motorcycles and stuff. Those are fun. I'm not saying that's an efficient means of transportation. I'm not I'm not saying I want to watch that every day, or that doing backflips on motorcycles and sticking the landing is the best way to transport yourself. It's not practical, but it's fun to watch. I feel the same way about a folding iPhone. Is that practical? Is that affordable? Is that efficient? No, not really, but it'd be fun. Let's just see the Apple engineering team do something fun. Like, why does it have to have a huge, like, addressable market or something? Let's just get creative with it. And iPhones are the biggest product category they have, so this is just another branch of iPhone. Honestly, I would rather have a folding iPhone than two plus-sized phones. Like, right now, the 14 Plus is pretty pointless. Foldable iPhone, I might argue, is more meaningful than the 14 Plus, because the 14 Plus is just big, expensive phone with last year's tech in it. Yeah, the Hummer EV is definitely a publicity stunt, that's for sure. Given the sad state of iPadOS updates, it could be Apple should give him a friend. My dad has considered getting Starlink for our family house in the Philippines. It's definitely a major game changer for developing countries if the price gets low enough. Yeah, I mean, it's a game changer even if the price is kind of high, because in a lot of places the internet it's not about the price, it's just about the availability. They're like, they will pay extra if they could get faster internet. They can't because of their location. It'd be cool if Apple made a foldable, because then it would become more mainstream, and maybe more normal people would get it and stop using their iPads. Well, people are stopping using their iPads anyway, Ian. But yeah, I do think Apple dominates. If you look up statistically, like, for smartphones that cost over $800, it's like 80% iPhone. Like, Android makes up most of the world's smartphones, but it's typically on the lower priced devices. It's not on the higher price. So Apple knows how to convince people to spend a lot of money on a phone. And all foldables tend to be pretty pricey. Even the cheap ones are $1,000. So if there was a company that could mainstream foldables, it's not Samsung. It's not Google, because most of Samsung and Google sales are on phones that cost under $500. That's their best sellers. Apple's best sellers are usually $1,000 on average, or maybe more. And so if it was Apple doing it, they would have the software to justify it, and they would have the resale value and the longevity and the brand recognition for, for a lot of people, it's just about not wanting to switch platforms, which I totally get. Having switched between so many phones these days, it's a lot of dang work switching to Android. So even if Android had some really compelling stuff to offer, I understand why someone wouldn't want to switch to it. But if suddenly, okay, now there's a folding iPhone I can get, and it'll work with my iMessage account, it'll connect to my Apple Watch. We've still never had the Apple Watch is the number one watch in the world. We've never had a folding phone that is compatible with the Apple Watch. We've never had a folding phone that has the Apple Wallet app. We've never had a folding phone that has AirDrop. We've never had a folding phone other than the iPhone 6, of course. But, like, if there was a market for it, Apple would bring it out, I think, better than anybody else could. But they probably won't, because it's not going to sell that well, and Apple plays everything super safe these days. But who knows? I was advocating for USB-C on the iPhone for years, and I thought that we had lost that battle, and everyone was talking about, Mark Gurman as well was all reporting on, no, Apple's going portless. Next year's iPhone's not going to have a port. This is the portless is the future. That's where we're headed. And here we are. And all the rumors are now flipped, and actually USB-C is coming, and it'll be Thunderbolt on the Pros and slower on the regulars. And it's like, oh, okay. I never thought this day would come, but it's actually happening. I don't think Apple's as set in their ways as people may think. I think they tend to do things. They probably have some long-term plans, but they're adaptable depending on what the market is interested in. So technically, I think Kuo has mentioned that Apple has prototyped foldable phones and experimented with them. So I have no doubt they have prototypes of folding iPhones for sure. I mean, we've had folding phones now for like 4 years. It's not really even new, innovative tech anymore. It's kind of been around for half a decade at this point. So it exists internally, I'm sure. But I think that Apple's probably just looking at the market and how foldable sales account for such a small percentage of it. And they're just like, yeah, the quality of the screen, it's kind of plasticky and the crease. We don't like the way this makes our brand look, so we just won't do it. But I don't know. I think they should throw the tech community a bone here and there. Just like, everyday people won't buy this, but we should just make it anyway. Just because... I mean, Samsung does that all the time. Samsung will just release things that are clearly not going to sell that well, but the tech community will love it. So just give it to them, Let's see. Foldables are not for normal people. I will admit I saw one recently. I was in a public place and someone just pulled out a Z Fold and started using it and put it away. I've seen them in the wild a few times. Hummer EV is such an insult to my preferences for EV and tech. I prefer small, efficient tech, and the Hummer EV is everything but that. I know. I hate the Hummer too, Margell. I'm right there with you. Do you think that Apple making a foldable phone will hurt iPhone or iPad sales? Well, are you considering it not an iPhone? I would just consider it a different version of an iPhone, but personally, I don't think it would hurt iPad sales. I think iPad sales are kind of in their own realm because it's like a $2,000. It'd probably be a $2,000 phone. I don't see that convincing people to not buy a $400, $500 iPad, which most iPads are selling under $500. Most people aren't buying the Airs or the Pros. And a folding iPhone would be really small. It'd probably be smaller than an iPad mini. So, you have an acquaintance who owns a Hummer EV. Really? I've still never seen a Hummer EV in the wild. I've seen Lucid Airs. I've seen Rivians. Of course, Teslas. And I've seen a Cadillac Lyriq, which is from GM. I've seen F-150 Lightnings and Mach-E's. Those are getting really popular where I live. But still, to this day, no Hummer. Let's see. I really wish Apple Watches would be compatible with iPads. Sure, I wouldn't be able to use all the features, but I would still buy one. Yeah, I like the idea of using an iPad mini as a phone. I really want to try that, but there's so many iPadOS things in the way. And I'm kind of sick of all the iPadOS stuff. Like, can you use an iPad to do blank? The answer is no. It always comes down to that. Can you do it? Almost. There's like a light at the end of the tunnel, but as you run towards the tunnel, it just keeps moving away. That's my experience with using iPadOS. It's like you're almost there all the time, and then there's a barrier that says, but it's an iPad, so it can't do that. Okay. Apple keeps pushing it in that box of, well, it has to be an iPad, which means it can't do that. It's good at note-taking and drawing, and that is it. Okay. That's interesting. Logan hasn't seen a Cadillac, but he's seen the Hummer. I guess they're just not popular around here. I've seen regular Hummers. I have a neighbor, actually, with like a Hummer, but like the old one, the gas one, which is even worse somehow than the electric one. But, they stopped making those for a reason. They stopped making the Hummer, and they decided when we transition to electric vehicles, let's bring back the Hummer. What? Okay. Do you think we'll have to wait until the fall to see a 3nm chip? I think so. I think typically when the timelines aren't adding up for a product release schedule, it's typically because leakers and analysts are claiming something is coming sooner than it actually is. So right now, if they're saying that there's going to be an M2 15-inch MacBook Air at Dub Dub. That probably means we're not going to see an M3 until maybe spring. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if the A17 chip is the first 3nm chip at this point. Let's see. I've seen several Rivians in the beautiful Wasatch Mountains. I hope I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. But yeah, they're gorgeous vehicles. I love Rivians. I can't justify owning one. I can't justify a pickup truck. I don't need a pickup truck for anything, and I don't do off-roading stuff, and I don't want to do off-roading stuff, to be honest with you. But I do just love the look. I do think they're a beautiful vehicle. But I think it's an overall wise thing for us with our vehicle purchases to think of what do we use them for, and what's going to fit that use best. I was kind of ranting on Twitter the other day with I saw some poll for that people were voting on, like, what are you buying a Cybertruck for? And the leading poll vote at 45% was, I'm buying my Cybertruck so that I can commute in it, and I'm buying it because of the way it looks. And the other options were like legitimate, like I'm going to use it for off-roading, or I'm going to use it as a work truck, or I'm going to use it for this. And most of the votes were for, I'm going to drive to work and back because it looks cool. And it's like, I mean, it's a free country, do whatever you want, but it just feels wasteful to me. Like, not only is there a huge line of people that want to buy this truck and actually go off-roading or camping or work with it, and you're pushing those people back further in the line because you want to look cool, but also you're using more energy. I think a lot of the time people just think, well, it's an electric car, so we don't have to worry about the environment anymore. And it's like, there's still the Hummer as an example. There is a bad way to do an electric car. And if you make them heavy and inefficient, they're going to tear up the roads faster. They're going to tear through tires faster. They're going to drive up your electric bill higher. So you're going to strain the grid more. And so whatever your use case is, in my opinion, if it's for commuting, you should try to emphasize the efficiency of it and, like, you know, how little energy can it consume, the longevity of it, that kind of thing. Just the reliability and stuff. I just don't, you know, I could just say I don't need a Rivian for anything, but I like the way it looks, so I'm going to buy one. But then I'm going to be paying more for insurance. I'm going to be paying more electricity for it. And I'm going to be taking away a Rivian from someone that could actually use it for work or for something. So it's just, America has a very bizarre obsession with truck culture of just like, I want to buy the big powerful thing because I like the way I look in it. And I can kind of understand that. I'm like, I can visualize me driving around a truck, and I guess that would make me feel more confident, but that's just a fleeting thought. That's not a thought you should like keep going with and buy an entire vehicle over. I bought this so I look nice in it. Like, that's just, yeah, I don't know. Buy the product that fits the need best, I think. And that's why I bought my MacBook Pro, because I'm dumping footage on it and storage on it all the time. And I'm chewing through battery and video for my work and for uploading. And, you know, it fits its purpose best. You know, I don't like buying things that are not fitting their purpose very well. Yeah, like Alpha said, the trucks are vehicles that are designed to work, not made you look like you work. That's a good way of putting it. U.S. power grid already won't be able to support half the country using it to charge their vehicles. Yeah, there's other bigger problems than the grid. The grid can scale faster than we're not transitioning everybody to electric vehicles overnight. It's going to be a very slow, gradual process, and the grid can account for that. The bigger problem is the time of use, like when the vehicles are charging. But we're already accommodating for that with utility plans that make electricity cost cheaper during off-peak hours versus on-peak hours. But, you know, when we were having rolling blackouts and stuff, the issue was HVAC, not electric cars. The people were using their HVAC too much at one time. It's the grid's more overwhelmed with how many people are using it simultaneously all at once. When the temperature gets high, EVs you can charge pretty slowly overnight if need be. There's some videos I could recommend to you. Tag me on Twitter if you're interested, that kind of explain how the grid will be okay. But It will still gain. The incentive with 3 nanometer on the iPhone is efficiency gains. Hopefully, we get a huge upgrade in battery life. I think what's more likely than a huge upgrade in battery life is Apple will shrink the size of the battery, or they will designate that they will come up with something in the background that uses more energy now that their main chip uses less energy. I don't think there's necessarily all advantages to just having 2-day battery, now 3-day battery, now 5-day battery. 5 nanometer to 3 nanometer is a bit more exciting than M1 to M2 chip upgrades, but it's still probably going to be like a 20% improvement. It's not going to be like game-changing battery life. It's just, it's a little bit better, but Apple can eat into that with some background software optimization or some new feature that kind of chews through your battery life faster. Maybe it's 5G. Or they can shrink the size of the battery so that it's cheaper or thinner or whatever. I agree. I think Aptera is the perfect commuter vehicle. If Tesla didn't exist, what car manufacturers would be leading the pack? No counting startups. I think Volkswagen. I like what Ford's doing. I really respect Ford. And if you're counting Chinese brands, then BYD. They're being quite aggressive in their transition. People who buy pickup trucks for their cars are like people who buy maxed out iPad Pros for watching videos. Yeah, it's the same thing. Stresses me out. Like when people say, I bought an M2 iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard case. Why? And it's 2 terabytes. Why? So it can hold all of my seasons of The Office. It's like, oh gosh. It's a really expensive portable TV station you got there, but okay, it's your money, I guess. I'm not saying that should be illegal. I'm just saying it annoys me. It's just a personal gripe. It's like when I see that, it bugs me. It's like, I don't know. Some people have OCD. I have like, efficiency loss disorder or something. Capital allocation anxiety. I don't care why the bar on the bottom of my iPad can't be optionally removed. I've been suggesting that since the iPhone 10, and it's still not here. When we'll use nuclear power? That's a battle we've been having for decades now. I'm all in favor of nuclear power. I think there's a right way to do it, and we just don't do it. But everyone's just so nervous. Oh, it might be dangerous. Then they shut them down. It's ridiculous. But there's not much I can do about it, unfortunately. Even if you vote for people that say they want nuclear, that doesn't mean it's going to change anything. Whereas, at least with solar tech, what I like about solar is you decide where your energy comes from, rather than I could shake my fist and I could protest at the Capitol and I could argue all I want for nuclear energy, and nothing could happen. But I can buy solar panels, or I could buy a car in the future, hypothetically, that has got solar cells on it and completely independent from the grid. I like that idea because the whole process of getting solar panels on your roof can be daunting and problematic. And my parents did it when I was growing up and regretted it later. And they were like, this ended up being kind of a huge headache. So they've kind of, not solely on that reason, but they've partially kind of talked me out of getting solar for my roof. But I like solar as a technology. I'm just not sure if the roof is the right place for it. I like the idea of it being directly on the vehicle. And regardless of where you get your energy from, I think focusing on more efficient forms of doing it is important. That's part of the reason I like Apple hardware, is they can make do with less. So you don't have to carry around giant bulky phones like this. You can just have more efficient chips and stuff. I'm glad you brought up BYD. Why is Elon feels he's in most competition with BYD? What is it about the company, car, software? I don't think it's that. It's just the market share. Like, you shouldn't probably count it, but if you count plug-in hybrids, BYD sells more vehicles than Tesla. Like, it's not a full electric vehicle, so it doesn't really count. Like, if we're counting just full electric vehicles, Tesla still sells the most. But BYD is the closest to competing with Tesla. Like, of all the automakers in the world, they have the best, outside of Tesla, they have the best margins, and they are the closer number 2 more than anybody else. If you take Tesla out of the equation, BYD manufactures more EVs than anyone. But I don't tend to talk about them too much because they're not available in my country, so I don't know that much about them. But I just know statistically, Elon sees them as very competitive because they make a lot of cars, and a lot of them are electric, and they've got good margins on those cars too. So it's a little bit unfair because I believe there is some Chinese government involvement with the company, so they might have an unfair advantage compared to what Tesla gets, but like a home field advantage type thing. Um, I don't know why yeah, I really want Aptera to make it to market. The amount of room in a full size truck is honestly the biggest thing. You feel free and feel like you aren't cramped. That being said, I own a Prius. Yeah, it's just the big size on the inside thing is just a feeling, though. It's very reactionary. It's just like, whoa, I'm big, yeah. But that doesn't like translate to anything except more expense. I mean, I'm not trying to dock all truck owners. There's people who genuinely use their trucks for a real reason. I'm just saying I don't really get why people buy trucks if they're just driving to work and back. Basically, they're just using them like you would use a sedan. It's like you're just using a lot more energy than you really need to. Marngel says nuclear power definitely gets way too much hate. They're not flawless, but they are necessary to move to an all renewable energy grid, in my opinion. Well, no energy source is flawless, in my opinion. It's not like usually. I think this happened in Germany and it's happened in the U.S. They will shut down a nuclear power plant because of a tiny, tiny radioactive spill, like the one I was reading about in San Diego. There was a radioactive what do you call it? The leakage that was equivalent to like one X-ray, like that a doctor would do for a patient, you know, like one X-ray's worth of radioactive leak, and they shut down the entire facility. And what are they replacing it with? Coal. So it's like, what? Because that's safer. What? Like, well, I guess it won't be radioactive, but now we're just filling the air with more gases and toxins, and there's all kinds of downsides, of course, to non-renewable energy being burned up. So when coal replaces it, I'm even more perplexed. If at least if you shut down nuclear, could you at least replace it with something renewable, whether it's hydro or solar, geothermal or something? But yeah, it's not flawless, but I definitely think that it can be done right, and there's countries that have proven how safe it can be once you know how to do it. Why do you think Ford is technically making more electric models outside the U.S. than here at home? Probably cost. I mean, even though they're manufacturing them outside the U.S., they're still losing a ton of money on them. I think the latest report said Ford is losing like $25,000 on every EV they sell. So that's not a good look. I mean, I applaud Ford for acknowledging their margins, because like GM won't even report that. GM doesn't even mention what their margins are on the EVs. They just said, we're going to stop making the Bolt, probably because the margins were really bad. But Ford at least came forward and said, hey, we have a path towards profitability, but we're not profitable with the EV business right now. So they're kind of using their gas vehicle business to subsidize the development of their EV business, which if I was in their position, I would be doing the exact same thing. And essentially, if I was the CEO of Ford, I would be doing everything Jim Farley's doing. I think he's making the right calls. And I'm very excited for Project T3 coming later, which is going to be their more aerodynamic focused truck. Because I'm such a big efficiency nut and I'm an Aptera fanboy, I'm excited to see what a pickup truck with active aero and a high voltage architecture and a NACS port, which is awesome. Ford accommodating for, we're going to switch to the supercharger network. And I also even appreciate their approach with the F-150 Lightning. You know, it's not necessarily the most flashy, exciting way to do a pickup truck, but I think it was smart to just say, okay, F-150 is the best-selling vehicle in the country for decades, so let's just make an electric version of what already exists, because what already exists is working really, really well. It's kind of like a if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. And they get to reuse a lot of the parts and accessories to manufacture it. So I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, just do an electric version of that for those who want a traditional vehicle. Some people don't want a really bizarre looking, Cybertruck style truck. Some people might want a more traditional truck that doesn't turn a lot of heads. And that's what I think a lot of people are looking for when they switch to electric. I don't want to be looked at as the weirdo who bought the electric car. I just want a normal car that works just like my last car does, and I'm comfortable with it, and it doesn't have to be this huge conversation starter. You know, some of us like those radical designs, like I like the Cybertruck design and I like the Aptera design, but you got to admit, every time you drive that thing somewhere, people are going to be looking at you like, what the heck are you driving? Why did you buy that? And every time you show up at a restaurant, at a family event, they're going to be like, why did you buy that? Why did you get that? And you probably won't get that with like an F-150 Lightning or even a Mach-E. It's just kind of a more natural looking vehicle. You just show up and people don't really think much about it. And I totally get why they made it very boring, essentially. It's kind of a boring design. I saw an F-150 Lightning yesterday, and I almost couldn't tell. I was like, is that? Yeah, it is. It is a Lightning. And I think that's what they were going for. They just keep it simple, keep it traditional for those who want it. But then Jim Farley's been talking about how they're also working on this new radical design. So the way I see it, that's more aerodynamic and more efficient and gets better range and everything. So the way I see it is Ford is just going to try to offer something for everybody. They're like, okay, we'll offer the Lightning for those that want the traditional design. And then for those radicals that want a crazy looking design that gets better range and is more futuristic, then we'll have something for that. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's cool. Connor the Gamer says, do you know who Flossie Carter is? Yeah, I don't watch many tech YouTubers, but I know who Flossie Carter is. And are you planning to collaborate with... I'm not planning any collaborations. What do you think will be announced for iOS 17? I'm hoping this rumor ends up being true, because I think it would probably be the coolest thing. Turning your iPhone into a nightstand for a smart display makes sense. Our phone screens are decent size. You can put the time on there. You can put some widgets on there while it's charging. That's an efficient use of that space. Like, come on. Yeah, so that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know what is going to come of, obviously, because I don't really trust the leaks and rumors, but I would love it if we get a battery charge limiter. You could just cap the charge percent at a certain point. That would be fun. I've heard there's rumors we're going to get some updates to the Wallet app, which makes sense to me because the Wallet app is doing more and more things, so they might want to tweak it a bit. It would also be cool if they announced their own checking account option. iPhone needs to switch to NACS. That would be... This phone might actually be big enough to accommodate for NACS. It's huge. You could actually probably put the NACS port on this thing. That might work. Anyway, I've been live for a while now. Oh, wait. Hasael says, I use my HomePod as my alarm and set it through the Home app or using Siri. I deleted the useless clock app. See, for some people who don't have a HomePod, the iPhone might be the perfect, replacement or, alternative thing for it. So I like the idea of making the iPhone do something functional when you go to bed rather than just sit there on the charger doing nothing. Like our Apple Watch can be a nightstand. Why can't the iPhone be a nightstand? It can charge on its side. It's got MagSafe. The more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. I hope they do that. But anyway, I'm going to get going now. And I'd love to talk more about that EV stuff, but I've been live for a while. My wife's probably wondering where I am. But I will... train station was 2 blocks away from my restaurant. I would have loved to serve you guys. Oh, thank you, OB. That's cool. That was a beautiful train station. Sorry I didn't tell you I was there. I didn't know you were there. But I just want to give a special shout out to our Tailosive Tech Ultra members, which bizarrely there's a bunch of you guys who are being extra generous. Tyler Forte, Riley McGinnis, Bobby 4C, Chris, Hasael Para Castañada, and Nicholas Linthicum. Thank you guys for being overly generous. You're way too nice. And I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day. Yeah, oh, I thought you were saying you want me to stream on DubDub. I'm definitely going to do a stream reacting to DubDub. You want me to stream every day until DubDub? I don't know if I could do that. Maybe if we don't do videos, I could do that. Maybe you guys can tell me what you think is worth it. Anyway, have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.